United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone, please bear with me. I have like a really bad cold and onset of laryngitis, so just raise your hand if you can't hear me when I'm talking. We'll start off the meeting with public comments.
Good afternoon. I'm Catherine Dorosky. I have lived and worked here full-time year-round on Shelter Island for the past 40-plus years. When I saw that the discussion regarding 100% property revaluation was on the town's agenda, I decided to come and speak up. Change is often difficult for people to embrace, and it's understandable that the idea of returning to 100% market valuation could be causing anxiety and concerns. But 100% market valuation is not new to us. Property owners for Brookfield 2021 should be aware that for approximately 20 years, that was the method used. I am here today to encourage everyone to stop and take a moment to, as my sweatshirt says, and why I wore it, find the good. Am I concerned this reevaluation could result in my taxes going up? Of course. But instead of complaining and bemoaning that possibility, I am choosing to find the good. 100% market valuation is the most fair, transparent, and equitable method to assess property. And shouldn't that be what we want for all of us who own property on Shelter Island? Therefore, I choose and encourage all property owners to find the good, knowing that moving forward, we are being assessed in that way. As property owners, we should be applauding our assessors for taking the step to return to a fair, transparent, and equitable means of assessing. And that's my other reason for being here today, to publicly say bravo and thank you, Shelter Island assessors.
Thank you. Nice.
On my sign-up sheet, I've got Robert and Catherine Harper.
Thank you. Good afternoon. And thank you for your very warm welcome for all of us who were working on the preservation law last time you were here. I really appreciated that and your questions. I'm Robert Harper, and we live at 14 Spring Garden Avenue. And as Councilman Dixon realized, it's Blake Bobby. And we've returned the sign, and now it's in the front of the house rather than on the side.
Okay.
And the sign was restored. So, I know you have lots of priorities and things that you are working on, and we can certainly appreciate this. But I'm here just to remind you guys about the preservation law that we submitted to you last time and how it can benefit Shelter Island, all of Shelter Island. So you might have seen that there was an article in the Shelter Island Reporter about this, very favorable to it. And shortly after that, there was an opinion article that was very favorable to it. And the last line of this, I could probably read it without my glasses, we urged the town board to act to create a Shelter Island Historic Preservation Board. So I'm here to just go over some of the benefits again. This is a very, very special place. I was just talking to Councilman Gooding before the meeting started. Turns out we went to the same high school. It's a small world, right?
Sure is.
And I think both of us have reached the conclusion that we've arrived at the place that really matters. This place is beautiful, it's historic, and it's got things that no other place I know has. So I'm very proud to be a homeowner here. So some of the benefits. What we want to do is to safeguard our historic properties. I kind of call it a Penn Station moment. You're all familiar, 1963, Penn Station was demolished. And at that time, there was no preservation law in New York City. And we lost one of the greatest buildings ever in New York City. When the preservation law came into effect, we have that to thank for Grand Central Terminal, which was preserved because of that law. So what we want to do is preserve what we have here because it's so special. Also, we talk a lot about green types of building. The greenest building you can have is the one that already exists. When you think about it, if you pull out an old window, it goes to the landfill. And all of those materials, especially what we call old growth materials, which are virgin forest trees that were harvested back then, that all just goes to waste. And A window like an Anderson window, that doesn't bring any value here to Shelter Island. That's somebody off island who's making a profit on that. When you have somebody, a skilled person who can come in and reglaze a window for you, that keeps the labor here, it keeps the materials here, and it keeps us with what we have. It's also a matter of civic pride and the beauty that we have here. When people come here, the first thing they see is historic homes. The whole stretch along Summerfield Place, those were the first 1872 cottages that were built here. We want to protect what we have here for tourism. I know sometimes we aren't happy with all the tourists that we get here, but they are the lifeblood of the economy. And people don't go to Nassau County to go and visit beautiful historic buildings unless they go to the North Fork, the Gold Coast. But they do come here because of the beautiful architecture. We see people strolling the heights all the time. It will strengthen our economy because it puts people to work. There are 2 homes within shouting distance of our house that are now being worked on. One is called Corner House, and the other, I just know it is 24 Spring Garden Avenue. The crews that are working there, it's a local crew. It's Chris Focon that's doing those projects. And these are good jobs. This is not the kind of thing where we couldn't keep our youth. These are jobs that if we can train people like that, they can stay here. And I know that's a big thing. There's a saying that porches were built to keep carpenters in business. So we've got lots of porches, and that will keep everybody busy here. We'd like to also, the law that we've created would also inform people about historic architecture here. Some of the buildings that we haven't discovered or listed, but not on the National Register, there's many of them, and we want to preserve them also. I know Karen, who is behind me, she's very interested in our 1700s architecture. And of course, none of these are protected at this point and could be demolished at any point in time. By conserving our historical and physical heritage, preservation provides a reassuring chain of continuity between now and the past. So I ask you, the proposal that we had submitted, it is complete. We took the best of all the East End laws, preservation laws. We looked at other places as far away as Charleston, South Carolina, and Savannah, Georgia. We tried to incorporate everything that was good in those. And as a former Southold Town Preservation Commissioner, I took all of my experience that I had there over 8 years, and I know the pitfalls. And in our draft law, we avoided, at least I hope we did, all the pitfalls that are there. So I think if this were adopted, we would probably have the best historic preservation law on the East End. And of course, you know, we're the only East End town of the 5 towns that does not have one. So I urge you, if you could look at it again, if you could consider bringing it to a public hearing, everything is there. We've included the applications for certificate of appropriateness, what the certificate of appropriateness would look like, a listing of all the National Register properties. It's all in here. So please don't let a Penn Station moment happen where we lose something before we realize how important historic preservation is. And once again, I thank all of you for listening and for your wonderful comments last time. They were much appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Harper,
Yeah.
would it be okay, can I reach out to you? I'd love to talk to you about this, only because I'm living the dream. You know, my house dates back to 1765.
Oh my goodness.
So-
Revolution.
Yeah, it's one of the first houses in Shelter Island.
Yeah.
And so I know all the pains and trials and tribulations. And I certainly have some specific questions, but I can also share some experiences. So I'd love to have a coffee with you one day.
I would absolutely love that. And I would love to see your home.
Sure.
But if you would like, this time I remember to bring business cards, so I will give you each of one of these. And thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you.
And none of this implies that I'm a paid professional.
Thank you.
I do this because I
Thank you.
love it, and I love old houses, and that's why I'm here. But thank you, I really appreciate that.
Next on the list, Tom Cronin.
Tom Cronin, I should be short and sweet, I hope. So a couple weeks ago, I was here speaking about hospital beds. I was told I was going to be put on the agenda. I've inquired, I still have not been put on the agenda. Do we know why?
We had tasked our senior liaisons
Mhm.
because the town board was saying no because of liability reasons, but you guys were going to talk to senior services and see if there was a workaround or some sort of alternative.
And we did, and.
We did, and we talked about that.
Here, we
Yes.
haven't had a meeting since.
What?
So we haven't had a meeting since, so I don't know what the
Might have been
disposition
in
was.
executive
It
session.
was in executive session, we talked about it.
Yeah, but it wasn't to the public. But
Right.
basically, the workaround was they didn't have one.
Yeah. The county that handles our residential repair, senior residential repair program, hospital beds are not part of that.
Yeah, I just.
They don't accept that.
We had told Tom at the last work session that we were going to put it on the agenda, which is why I was going to put it on the agenda, just to circle back to the public, so, like. I just-
So maybe,
let's-
sorry no
this
one
is-
got
this
back
is-
to you,
This is us circling back.
but sometimes we got so much on our plate, sometimes when you get a solid answer, you just want to move on.
So are we gonna, you want to explain now, or can we do it? What do you,
I think we just did.
We just did. I mean, I don't know what you want,
Say it
Tom.
again.
It's not part of the the county senior-sponsored residential program. They don't handle hospital beds.
okay,
And our senior center is concerned about overriding liability, that these beds, if they need repair or parts change out, inspection, they don't have the capability for it. And to sanitize a bed completely is a huge process. And it becomes an overriding liability issue, they felt.
so the county says we don't do it. Because I just,
But also,
hear me out, we've done it
Center.
for years, so I'm just trying to figure out what changed.
and they were happy not to do it anymore, and they don't want to take on that, they don't have the staffing, they're not prepared. to
And
take
that's
it on.
why I wanted to meet with you, because you're getting their side of the story. My side of the story, we do the work. We have the staffing, we do the beds, we've done the beds, we clean the beds. Just like the ambulance cleans the stretchers.
But you're
Clean
still,
beds.
you're still landing the liability on them. The ambulance crew is a different situation. They have their own insurance. So we didn't get a positive response.
All right, so, and that being said, yes,
I was just saying, what I did start doing is putting together a directory of resources that we could tap into when someone did need a bed. I just haven't finished it yet, so I'll send that to you when I'm finished with it.
all right, yeah, that'd be
I've
great.
reached out to the different
Like
hospitals.
free bed for
Yeah.
someone who's uninsured is what we
Exactly.
always use. Yeah.
Right, so that's what I was looking into.
All right, so the bed that's there, I take that back.
Yes, please.
Yeah. And maybe we could donate it to, I mean, we talked about all this executive session, about finding other resources, but we might be able to donate that bed to one of these services to help them out.
Yeah, I would like to look for one that's a nonprofit, not for a profit company, obviously.
Yeah, no, that's what we're looking
All
at.
right, I'll take the bed, safeguard it until we figure out better.
Tom, thank you for your concern and work on this,
Yeah, it's just a shame. I mean, you're gonna have people that don't have insurance, can't get this kind of thing, and we've always done it. I just hate to see something change for, in my opinion, is really no real reason, but understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Bert Wade?
Bert Wade, 9 North Prairie Road. So taxes, I'm not concerned about the 100% revow. I understand that's coming, and I'm not addressing that. Once it's at everybody's equal, tax collection on this island seems, very fair, notwithstanding that our tax collector drives around in a Ferrari. I'm not worried about it, okay? But, and we take her check her name, right? So, but taxes and fees that are going up, and I'm affected. I brought up the attention of the mooring fees, And Albert and Ben, you were in that WMAC committee, and you actually heard, not just from me, you heard from one of the members of the committee saying that it's a burden to come up with that money at a specific period of time. And he's a food fish handler, fisherman. And so I was wondering, I know it's only a tier 2 priority, but I was wondering if we could get that addressed. And that leads into how I see the workboat that I objected to in terms of the particular style that was recommended by the Bay Constables. I'm not against them having a boat. You know, they have probably 30 to 40 different buoys and things that they have to set. But I am objecting to the way it's funded. If you're going to take it all out of the WMAC, I'd like it to be one type of a boat. But these guys have dual roles. They are both Bay Constables and they work for the Highway Department. And if the boat's going to be in that category, then I think the funding should be coming also from the general tax base. And so I don't want to see the encouragement of the mooring fees to be so high to cover these expenses. So that's why I objected to that. The next thing about our taxes is the walking of the plank of the lawyer. I don't know if he fired, resigned, whatever. Sounds like, he had to leave, but that's left us a big hole, okay, you have to fill. And my calculations in just the first 2 months of the year, it's $50,000 extra. And of course, that's going to not be $25,000 a month going forward, but I'm assuming it's probably going to be at least $10,000 a month extra until you hire somebody. So I thought that could have been handled a little bit differently and kept our fees and our taxes lower. And now the next thing, the weather's changing. You're not going to have me much longer because I'm going to be out, doing stuff. I know you're happy.
Wondering about that.
I know, you're right. You're lucky. So this is it. So I'm going to get it all out now. So the next thing is over here, right? The last night was very revealing about, with the dock law and how Gordon in real time was grappling with, what he should, about how we should handle this. And so what that gets me to, and when I look back on your priority list, Gordon, you were very clear you wanted a planner. Now, I don't know, I didn't see a definition of that job. I don't know if that's a planner, a town manager, or what, but I'm wondering if that planner is to take off some of that responsibility of what you had to come up and make a decision about. Because, Gordon, it's one thing to be a politician and work the room, and you do it well, and you did a great job. And I consider you, we're friendly, right? I got no problem. But when you come here, it's when the rubber hits the road, it's you can't please everybody, and you got to be clear. And Albert, you are the definition of it, and I've got, you're going to stick to your guns, and we know where you stand. I don't like it, but I know where you stand. Okay? And so, Gordon, this planner seems to me that you want the no-show job. You want to come in, have this guy do this, makes the decisions, and I'll sit back. All right, he's done it. The closest thing you had to a planner, this town board, and this was before you guys sat here, a couple of you were here, was when Jerry, you had the town engineer came with a clean slate, said, so they had Jerry looked at what's the center of town, what do we need? You got all these municipal buildings, you have the school, and his idea was to have a unified wastewater treatment concept go down. And that was an outside vision. And that's where this town got lit on fire. And then you had the Friends of Cockles Harbor scream that it was the original place was flooding. I don't know, where's the flood coming from? The Alps here on Shelter Island? I don't know where how it floods down at the airport. I know it gets wet like everywhere else, but okay, so that got thrown out. And then, Gordon, from the Friends of Topless Harbor, the committee for, or the Island for All was formed, that was you. And then shortcut to taking over the Democratic Committee, right? So now, we're faced here in the center, you're sending down a guy from Hay Beach, another guy who's running for office, Craig Toner, right? And I've heard him speak. He comes across and he says, "Oh, I've been here for 7 years." And so that's the guy you're sending down to help run the town. So, you know, I'm just saying, so you know, I'm worried about my taxes. So you have to clearly state what these agenda is going to be with this planner. Because people are saying on Facebook it's $100,000 additional. And I'm saying, I think it's like $250,000 if you're going to have somebody. And then what is this person going to, if this person's only going to be, is only going to do what you tell them to do, right? If you rejected the objective advice of your professional engineer, right? How are you going to take the professional advice of a planner? So, you know, I think that's what I got that's one of my takeaways from last night. And, you know, like I said, I'm not going to be around much longer because I got to go out and, you know, work the bay. But, you know, Ben, I just got one more thing. Yeah. So you mentioned about boat lifts in Florida, you know, and you were talking about how beautiful, how ugly they are.
Yeah.
Right? But, you know, down in Florida, you know, and I've been there because I worked as a captain down there, so I spent a lot of time on that trip. You know, you've got the docks of concrete, you've got a concrete cap on the piling. Then you got some grass, right? Then you got a sidewalk, and then you got the road. The mangrove is long gone from what natural society, you know, natural.
I was further north, there were mangroves all up.
Were they? Okay, well, then that's a different spot. Okay.
And the docks were all wooden.
What's that?
The docks were wooden,
They were wooden?
concrete,
Okay.
and the boat lifts were hideous.
They were hideous.
This is,
Okay, I stand corrected.
okay.
All right, I'm not gonna, I won't finish that, but anyway, but the idea of beauty is a slippery slope. I think I'd rather see it go with character of the island, right? And so
I agree.
when you have, and so the idea of, and really, the doc law last night and what you were grappling with, Gordon, was there was no mathematical quotient that is being used to determine what constitutes a vista, right? So if somebody says your dock is in vista, so if someone lives, and those properties down there on Silver Beach on that iconic avenue are very narrow. So if you look out straight ahead with blinders on, you don't see the dock. But if you look 10 degrees either way, maybe you start to see the dock. So the idea is that might help you in your writing of the rule, that if you have, you pick a spot in the middle of the yard, and if you look 20 degrees to one side or the other, you draw a line straight out, something can interfere with that line. Now, that could be, but that's part of the concept of proportionality, which Albert, you completely disregarded when Meg came up with that concept for house sizes. But if you were to use that throughout the town, proportionality in terms of house sizes, you might be able to do it with lot sizes for docks and length. And also, you could also say they have to be flat docks, right? You can't have the pilings stick above the dock, the deck size. That's an option too. Docks are built that way. And then and just as a final little technical point, which you're not always getting the right advice, but when you have a bulkheaded area, bulkheaded thing, and it's wet, the high tide line is not where the water hits the bulkhead. If you look carefully at the survey, the high tide line is actually behind the bulkhead, right? So if you were to measure the high tide, what you're supposed to get in terms of length, supposed to be back further and not at the bulkhead. So I don't know how these docks were measured, but in that area, I would imagine that those lots and the bulkheads are so high that the high tide line is significantly back in the middle of the property, and they wouldn't be entitled to, 100 feet. I don't know how long those docks are, but I'm just saying that's something that, that's a technicality that needs to be looked at. So that's it. I'll see you next week.
All right, I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so
in this
much.
Fishing season this year.
Right.
May you catch any.
Well, it's oyster growing, and then I also do moorings. I'm very happy about the mooring business and how that's developing here in the island. Okay?
Good luck.
Good luck with your boats in Deering Harbor. I know I'm not your surfacer anymore, but good luck. I hope it's, that you have strong ground tap.
Yes.
Thank you, Bert. Bob Combs.
Thank you, Anna. By the way, it's amazing. It's great to have a guy as knowledgeable as Bert, on subjects for a town like this, seriously. Except I have a bone to pick, and probably the most important thing I'm gonna say, it's pronounced boy, not buoy, okay? Think of the word buoyancy. Something is more buoyant in salt water, right? It's not buoyancy, it's buoyancy. The Spanish word is boyar, right, to float. So it's boy, not buoy. It's really important. So anyway, I didn't come here to talk about preservation, but I was very interested in hearing what had been said earlier by this gentleman behind me who I don't know. I've long been an advocate of having some form of preservation board or architectural review board. I haven't looked at the proposal, that's been provided to this board, but I think in the past I've suggested, especially when it comes to business, there's going to be a lot of construction going on along 114 in the future because of inevitably there's going to be construction, but there's nothing to preserve on vacant land. So you have to have some part of this that says, hey, we have to take a look at what these buildings are going to look like. We don't want it looking like Northern Boulevard, in Long Island, in Nassau County. We want it to look like Shelter Island, whatever that is. So some people on this board who are creative types who can figure out what is the look and feel of Shelter Island, and let's try to maintain consistent with that look and feel. Whether it's Daring Harbor buildings or whether it's this area here, this building itself, that needs to be figured out so that when businesses do want to give proposals, it's not just to be about variances and stuff. It's actually going to be about what these things are going to look like, what's the future of the town going to look like, and don't let it just happen, or else we're going to have a mess, on our hands that we're not going to be proud of, that you can't fix. So the time to fix it is now. Really getting this in place with it, both preservation of what has been, as well as architectural review of in the future, especially business, especially vacant land. Now on residential, probably a little more controversial and a little more difficult. I would separate those two, making the business side the easier case. Residential, you kind of want to have eclectic houses, sort of. You don't want all the houses to look the same, except maybe in the heights, and they could preserve that. The other thing is don't overburden someone who wants to do a gut renovation on their house because it's from 1742 or whatever it is, and the plumbing doesn't work anymore. So you want to have some flexibility. What I really came here for was to reiterate something I mentioned that maybe the last time I was here, having to do with the budget. And I suggested at that time that the budget increases should be consistent and really not more or much more than increases in Social Security. Because this is, if you take a look at the demographics, I think in terms of the process that was going on in terms of the town, what do you call it, the town plan, right, the plan, that it's an older population, and there are a lot of people here who are retired who are paying property taxes each year and are living on Social Security. So if property taxes go up at a faster rate than your Social Security payments, you're going to have an affordable housing problem that is of a different nature that you've been working, having to do on these other projects. So I would strongly recommend that you try to use these increases in Social Security, which increases with inflation. And if you're going much further than that, you have to start thinking about who you're going to be throwing out of their homes because of the increases in the taxes. So finally, on this, one question I mean, I wasn't able to understand from the newspaper as to how this increase in valuations is going to affect our property taxes, and I understand someone's going to be speaking today about it. It would be good if we can have part of that explanation. I always understood that New York State, starting about 15 or 20 years ago, outside of New York City, had a cap of 2% a year on property taxes. So I'd like to know how that fits in to what's going on here with terms of this revaluation. So you can have a huge revaluation. The value of your home can go up 50% on the assessment roll, but are we still going to have just a 2% increase? And what power does the town board have to override the 2%? Okay, and then and what is the standard that is used? If there's a lot of inflation, maybe you can do it, but the inflation is usually going to be reflected in increases in Social Security, which I think at the end of the day should be a real benchmark in terms of increases to keep people in their homes definitely. Thanks.
Bob, quick question. Do you know when the new annual COLA rates are released?
When?
Yeah.
Usually it's like September or so when they COLA for Social Security.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you were
Yeah,
saying
I think
this
in
the-
September, we all got it. I'm on Social Security, I got a notice, I think in September, saying this is what the rate's gonna be, and then they start in February or whatever it is, January.
I'm not on Social Security yet. I'm close.
You look at it.
I'm close.
Oh, no. Anything else? All right, thanks.
I see Kim Nolan, you've had your hand up for a while.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so first I wanted to just say that I agree with Bob about two things. One is the look of the corridor, because it will be developed. And I think, you know, the place that we really start, despite the efforts at architectural review, is zoning. And I think, as you know already, and I'm going to stop on that topic right now, I believe the comprehensive plan, as it's currently drafted, is woefully inadequate and does not protect the island in its discussion of zoning. I've heard that it's being rewritten. I don't know why the public isn't being consulted, but that's all I'm going to say right now on that. The other thing I want to just say, I agree with you, Bob, is tax caps. How did tax caps get put in the first place? Probably for reasons that are similar to what Bob is saying, which is elderly people on fixed incomes ultimately can't afford to pay their property taxes. Now, that is a matter of government spending more than it is a matter of revaluation. So I know the topic today is revaluation, but I think the topic should be at virtually every town board meeting or work session, government spending, because we have had pretty significant increases over the last several years, and people can fall back on inflation, but our increases are well above any measures of inflation, including the COLA on Social Security. Now, what I really came to talk about is the revaluation, and I realize that the discussion is coming after, so I don't want to bore people. And I'm just going to say, as I understand it, this is simply a lockstep revaluation for every single property assessed on the island. You can get it right off your letter, like John Cronin said in his article. You take the old assessment, you divide it by 0.68, which is the same as multiplying it by 1.47, and that is your new assessment. That happens to every property. What that does, except for new construction and additions, gets put into a total valuation for the island. So the total valuation for the island is going to go up massively. In order to keep taxes at a reasonable level, the government must therefore reduce the tax rate. Now, in the past several years, and I don't have these fingers at my, I don't have these numbers at my fingertips because I'm not in my office this week. And by the way, I didn't even get the last 5 hours to prepare because the meeting was moved from 6 to 1, as I understand it. So there were people who were counting on that 6 p.m. meeting, town board. In any event, back to my main topic. So what you get is a much larger valuation of the island as a whole. And the town board is going to need to tell us what the tax rate on that and on your increased assessment is going to be. Now, again, not having the numbers at my fingertips, I will give you a ballpark for prior tax rates, which was around 0.0067. What was put out on the internet and later deemed to be inaccurate was the slide saying that this tax rate would go down to 0.005897. And therefore, your taxes would not go up the entire amount of the assessment. Your taxes would go up less. But it was still a substantial increase on that slide. That 0.00589 resulted in my taxes going up 29%. And I did the numbers like John Cronin told me to. So this is largely a numbers game. Now I'm going to give you an example of why I think that we should go back to the tried and true and fair methodology of comparable sales and market analysis, which is in fact what New York State requires as a matter of law. I do not understand this major reval in terms of the New York State tax law, which Mr. Woolham will undoubtedly explain to me, but I do think that we need to go back to the way we used to do it, which is 100%, but it's based on real values as opposed to a lockstep division by 0.68. Now, I'd like to give you what some might seem an apocryphal example of what could happen here. And I'm using slides that are on the assessor's website in large part, so that if you can't follow what I'm saying, you can go to the assessor's website.
Kim,
What?
this discussion might be helpful if we let Judith and John.
Amber, it's
give
just
their-
one more little example. It won't take more than
Okay,
2 minutes.
'cause
I
they've got-
promise you.
They're going to answer your
Okay.
question.
Okay, this is also public speaking time, and it's not an asterisk, right?
Correct.
There's a presentation and comments are taken after.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
answer-
it's
yeah,
not
you're
a
coming up.
double asterisk.
Okay, go ahead, finish
4
up.
minutes. All right, here's my example. There are 3 houses on Shelter Island. 2 are in a neighborhood that has experienced serious flooding from time to time. And as the climate changes, it's getting worse and worse for them. The other is in a neighborhood across the island. As everyone who's ever looked into their taxes know, the comparables for your tax value can be taken from every place on the island, not just your neighborhood. What happens is last summer, the 2 houses in the neighborhood that has flooding, they're assessed at 2.5 million each because they each have the same amount of land and the same amount of square footage. And by the way, they're right next door to each other. In the flood surge, one of the houses is completely wrecked. No systems survive. It's an absolute teardown. The other house, even though it's next door, it's like a tornado. It isn't hit as bad. So only minor damage is done to that house. The third house that isn't in the neighborhood at all is just the same as it always was. In the fall, all 3 of these houses are sold. The house that's totally wrecked and is basically land value is 1.5 million sale. The house that was partially damaged, but still usable and can be updated, etc., is sold at its assessed valuation of 2.5 million. And the house that wasn't even close to them in a different neighborhood is sold, and this is within the space of 3 months in the fall, is sold at 3.5 million. In the revaluation, every single one of these houses will be revalued at the same amount, 3.67 million. Now, I just go back to the point I'm trying to make. If you are going to put this kind of thing onto the island, it exacerbates inequities that may not have been taken into account when it was conceived and when it was written into law, because things happen, values change, and therefore I strongly recommend that in special cases, our assessors take the time to look at the individual property, what its market value is, and what it's sold for, despite this supposedly wonderful revaluation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Hopefully there aren't any more public comments, because this would be the perfect segue to our first agenda item. Is there anybody else? Perfect. Okay. On that note, then, we'll turn it over to Judith Beckmansky, our assessor, as well as John Rollman, who's Regional Director for the New York State Tax and Finance Department of Real Property Tax Services. So, take it away, Judith.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Judith Legnansky, Town Assessor. We worked very hard on this particular project. And I'm accompanied here today with John Lone, who's from the Office of Real Property Tax Services. He has been instrumental in guiding us through the assessment disclosure process. And I'd also like to thank my staff, Patrick Stolden, who's been with us for 13 years, and Laurel Hardy, my new aide, who has been here for a year and has already taken 5 of the 7 required classes to get up to speed to being an assessor. So I would like to take a moment to thank them for all their work. So thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So first I'd like to start off with, I guess, what the assessor does, right? And the assessors establish a value by comparing similar properties to similar properties for every other property on the island, right? And that analysis will tell us what each property would likely sell for on the open market. Now, this valuation of property is used to establish another value, which would then determine the budget, how much of the budget each property owner is responsible for. So in simple terms, we create a market value for the property while the county, town, school will create a budget. And then the budget or levy is then divided by the total assessed value of the town to arrive at a tax rate. So.
You want your PowerPoint?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. That one, please, yes, thank you. And I'm on page 2 at this point. Okay, so now definitions. Assessed value is what your property would be assessed for tax purposes. Market value, what your property would sell for on the open market. Your tax rate, percentage at which your property is being taxed. So you take your taxable assessed value, multiplied by your property rate per 1,000, and that will give you your taxes owed. Now you have your equalization rate, which is a ratio comparison of assessed value to market value, right? So it's the total assessed value of the municipality divided by the total market value of the municipality. That gives you your equalization rate, which ours right now is at 68%. Prior years, prior to 2021, it was 100% and has been for over the last 20 years. Okay, next slide, please. Purpose of the reassessment is, as market values increase and assessments don't reflect those changes, some property owners could pay more in taxes while others may pay less, right? Assessments are intended to maintain equity and fairness amongst the community. And as real estate markets have risen for the last 4 years, annual reassessments are the best way to ensure that the assessments are kept fair and equitable. Assessments at 100% accurately represent each individual taxpayer responsibility, and assessments at 100% also keeps transparency between the assessed value and market value, which would become equal. So why should we do the reassessment now? Currently at 68%, our assessed values don't reflect market value. And at 68%, people who get exemptions are not receiving the full benefit of their exemptions. They're only receiving 60% instead of 100%. So the difference between assessed value and market value will continue to grow if we don't do a reassessment now, creating a larger gap between the assessed value and the market value. And that growing gap will cause the tax rate to continue to increase, as it has been for the last couple of years. So the town also receives funding from the state if we keep it at 100%. And why not accept money from the state if we can? So we want to have the assessed value and the market value be the same thing. Okay, so now why reassess each year? To maintain fairness and equity, transparency and accuracy, and the full value of exemptions, right? All benefiting the taxpayer. Okay, so do we determine taxes? The assessor does not determine taxes. Taxes are set by the county legislature, town board, school board, and the library, fire district. Everybody sets their own budgets, and then we take that budget and divide it by our assessed value to then get the tax rate. Okay, so does the town get any extra money for doing the revaluation? No, we don't. The town doesn't get any extra money because the budget is still the budget, regardless of what entity is creating the budget. The budgets are still there, and the budget amount is still the same budget amount. So I have a hypothetical example, so bear with me on this one. So in this, which I also got from a prior assessor, who really is very knowledgeable on how to explain this properly. So there are 1,000 identical houses in this hypothetical situation, and you have a town budget, $10 million. You take that $10 million budget and divide it by 1,000 houses, that gives you $10,000 in property value. Property taxes, right? And here, there's no value applied to the houses because everything is identical, right? Okay, so now you take those 1,000 identical houses and you cut their assessed values in half, or no, I'm sorry. I have my slides mixed up here. So you take those 1,000 identical houses with an assessed value of $1 million each, right? For a grand total of $1 billion of grand total assessed value, right? Now you still have that same budget, $10 million. Take that $10 million budget, you divide that by that $1 billion of assessed value, multiply that by 1,000, and that gives you a mill rate of $10 per 1,000, right? Then you take that $1 million of assessed value, multiply that by that 10,000, and that essentially gives you your $10,000 in taxes, right? With your assessed value there. Now, a little further up, if you go, you see there's 1,000 identical houses. Now your assessed value is at $500,000, 500,000, right? So for a grand total of, instead of $1 billion, you now have $500 million. And at that $500 million, you still have a budget of $10 million, right? And you can see in the math there that it has the $10 million budget, $500 million assessed value, multiply that by the 1,000, that gives you $20 per $1,000 of assessed value. And then you notice 500,000 times that $20 divided by that 1,000 still gives you $10,000 in taxes, right? So you know why you still have $10,000 in taxes? Because the budget never changed, right? So if our budgets don't change, taxes would remain the same. Okay. So now, next slide. There's a lot of information here, so I'm gonna try to explain it as easily as I can. So I wrote down each year for the last couple of years. Now there's assessed values for what the assessed properties were. Then you have the sale prices of what properties were selling for, and the increase over the assessed value, what the difference is between the two. Okay? And for inland, you can see the difference. Waterview, you see the difference. Waterfront and vacant land. I'm just going with the basic properties on the island. I'm not going commercial because that's only 3% of our entire municipality. But you can see over the years, in just 2024 alone, because we didn't do a reval, the median home price was $762,000 and the sale price was 1.5 million, right? So that's 100%, 106% increase. Right, and then with Waterview, same thing, 2.296 up to 3 million, that's a 30% increase. Waterfront was 1.9, while the sale price was 2.8, that's a 43% increase. And vacant land had an assessed value of 385,000, sale price 545, that's a 42% increase. Okay. So on the next slide, I broke it down by the different neighborhoods, right? Because everybody wants to know about their neighborhood. How is this going to impact their neighborhood? So Hay Beach is the first one, our first neighborhood. And in Hay Beach, I'm giving you the 2024 assessment roll value and what the new 2025 assessment roll value is. I'm also giving you the average price per home, or average assessed value, excuse me, per home in that neighborhood and what that difference is. So that 2.2 million is the average assessed value in Hay Beach. And now there's no differentiation here between inland, waterfront, Waterview, vacant land, it's all lumped in here, it's just broken down by neighborhood. And then the last column gives you the percentage of what each neighborhood is in Shelter Island. So Hay Beach is 12.29% of Shelter Island. Okay? I'm not gonna go through that, I can post this online for people to view so they can see the difference in all the different neighborhoods. Okay. So on the next slide, we have what the tax rates are. So you have the last couple of years, what our gross assessed value was, what our rate per thousand is, and then what the budget is, right? So in 2025, or excuse me, 2024-25, we had a gross assessed value of 3.8 billion, right? And our rate per thousand was just under $7 per thousand, right? And your budget is 27 million. So at that, at $1 million home, your taxes would be just shy of $7,000, right? So now, moving on to this year, if you have $1 million house with what our new $6.3 billion gross assessed value would be, your rate per thousand would be $4.25, give or take. So that brings your total taxes for $1 million house down to $4,285, right? So now, if your house was assessed at $1 million last year, and you're now up to $1,570,000, your taxes are going up to $6,670. And again, these are estimates off of last year's budget numbers. So obviously, we need to hear about the budgets for school, county, library for 2025. Okay? Okay, so now, the next slide, we have, again, the different neighborhoods. And I took the average value for each neighborhood, what their taxes would have been in 2024, what the average new value is per neighborhood, and giving you an estimate based on the 2025 tax rate, potential 2025 tax rate on the 2024 budget. And you can see the dollar difference just based on these averages. Okay, so for instance, in Hay Beach, the average value in 2024 was 1.3 million. Total taxes then were 9,000. In 2025, it's 2.2 million, with total taxes being 9,300. Total tax difference is $200. Okay? Choose another one. Let's see, West Neck, average assessed value in 2024 was $1,010,000. Average tax bill would have been 7,000. Your 2025 value went up to 1.7 million, giving you an estimate of $7,387. So your tax bill increased $331. Now you can choose another one. Like I said, in Nostrand here, you have a $3 million house, and it was paying taxes of 21,000. Now you went to 4.7, and that gives you a $20,000 tax bill, which is a $1,300 reduction in your tax bill. So again, I will post these online so everyone can look at them and review them at their own leisure. All right, so then the next slide is the new median values based on this evaluation. So houses went from an average assessed or a median assessed value of 865 to a median assessed value of 1.662. That's a 92% increase in assessment. There's 2,500 parcels of homes on the island. Now, vacant land, same thing, went up around 45%. Again, there's properties that are slivers, smaller pieces, not buildable. That accounts for 608 parcels on the island. The other line includes nonprofits, private roads, commercial, everything else is lumped into there. And we have 3,471 total parcels. Okay, so now onto exemptions. So these are the exemptions that are readily available to anybody who has Shelter Island as their primary residence. Basic Star is income-based, you need to make less than 500,000 to qualify for that one, but you need to be a primary resident here. Enhanced Star, over the age of 65, income less than 107,000, again, primary residence is here. Senior and disabled, again, over the age of 65, income less than 58,400. And that can be the sliding scale of up to 50% off your tax bill if you make less than $50,000. So I encourage anybody who's a senior, look at your income tax, take a look at it. If you make less than $50,000, and this is your primary residence, come in to talk to me and we'll see what you can qualify for. For veterans, any veteran that has Shelter Island as their primary residence, they can apply for the exemption here as well, bring in their DD 214, and we can get you signed up for those exemptions as well. Now, this is the one that impacts the full value. So if we are at 100%, a veteran would receive the full benefit that the town has applied in their law, right? So the town has adopted, that's a better word. The town adopted these new levels a couple of years ago. And it's a good thing they did, because if we had stayed at the lower levels, they would be receiving less than what they were currently receiving now. And now at 68%, they're only receiving a fraction of what they would normally be receiving, because it's at 68% instead of at 100%. So us being at 100% would then give the veterans their full discount. The next slide is a slide that's from the state. I'm not gonna go over it because it's on our website. I've gone over it before. It pretty much gives the same information as I've just gone over, but with our real numbers here in the town. Okay, next slide is our timeline and our dates. So March 1st is when we're hoping to send out the letters for the new assessed value and your estimated tax base on based on your 2024 tax roll. May 1st is when we will publish the tentative roll, like we always do every year.
And then you have from May 1st until May 20th to grieve your new assessment. And we will have informal review period as well between March 1st and March 28th to go over the letter that you received in the mail. July 1st will be our final publication date, and that is what you will be taxed upon come December 10th in 2025. The next slide is some resources from the New York State Assessors Association. They have great information on their website. They also have a great YouTube video about what assessors do and how they do it. And then, again, Office of Real Property Tax Services, which you can find out any information on there about assessments, how tax rates determined, things like that. And my last slide is about questions or concerns, but I don't know if I should have John speak maybe before we go over the questions. One of the things that we're going to go over, sorry, John, before we go over is that you will be receiving a letter, the assessment disclosure notice. I will also have in my office, well, let's have John go over that first, but you will be receiving that assessment disclosure notice in the mail, hopefully on March 1st.
Quick question?
Yes.
And maybe you can defer to later, I don't know.
Yeah.
But first of all, thank you for this. It was really clear and really well done, and I hope everyone will appreciate it. I also heard your message loud and clear, which is don't hate the player, hate the game. But one thing I didn't connect was there's state money available to the town by going to 100%.
Correct.
And what is that? How much is it?
John would be able to speak to that.
Okay, great.
Better than I could.
Great.
So I guess without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to John.
Good afternoon, everyone. To answer Councilman Diet's question right up front, the town is participating with this reassessment. It is re-entering what's called the cyclical reassessment program. So in the year of a reappraisal, which is what the town is doing for the 2025 roll, the town will become eligible for a payment of up to $5 per parcel. I will say that unfortunately, the amount that is appropriated for this program is less than we're fully funded, which is why I have to pay up to $5 a parcel. And the amount that ends up being received will really be dependent on the number of municipalities that reassess for 2025 that would qualify in their respective parcel counts. But there is money available, and under the existing program, there would be money every time the town does a reappraisal. I will just say, perhaps I can address the question that I believe the speaker earlier addressed about the way this reassessment was conducted. And if I understood her correctly, the way she was looking for the reassessment to be conducted is exactly how the assessor's office, Judith and Pat and Lauren, did this reassessment. It was not simply a mathematical factoring of assessments from 68 to 100%. It was an examination of properties that sold and analyzing those to see their relationship to properties that didn't sell. So the reappraisal reassessment that the town is now in the final stages of is all about determining an appropriate market value for each and every property in the town. And actually, could we go to we'll go to slide 2.
Judy?
No, well, I thought, yeah, there it is. Thank you. Yeah, slide 2. Yeah, so here's the thing. What everyone, and I'll say up front that I'm going to apologize because the letters that Judith referenced weren't ready for today. It has nothing to do with the town. It's not Judith's fault. It's no one's fault except the program that's run to do that for some reason isn't working. And a number of towns that are in this stage of a reassessment are experiencing this. There are folks in Albany that are hard at work diagnosing that, and I would hope that the letters would be ready certainly by the end of the week. I do apologize that they're not ready for today. That said, what all property owners in Shelter Island will want to keep in mind is that when you get this notice, it's going to have a 2025, what I call a preliminary assessment. And I call it a preliminary assessment because the town's tentative roll will not be issued until May 1st. So the assessment that you get in your notice, there still is the possibility it could change. But for your reference, and again, I would urge everyone to look carefully at that letter, the value that you see on that notice that represents your 2025 assessment is supposed to represent 100% of market value, with market value being established as of the town's legal valuation date, which is July 1st of 2024. So Pat and Judith, they were doing an immense amount of analysis of sales, but they were really looking at sales up to that valuation date. I think anyone who's ever had an appraisal, let's say you were looking to buy a property, you have to get an appraisal, your bank requires it. The first thing the appraiser is always going to ask you is what is the date that you want the appraisal to represent? Because value always has to be set as of a certain point in time. So for purposes of a town's assessment roll, the overwhelming majority of towns in New York State, there are some exceptions, but the overwhelming majority, including Shelter Island, and frankly, including all towns in Suffolk County, have a valuation date of July 1st of the preceding year. So when you're looking at your assessment, the question you want to ask is, look, is this a reasonable market value if I was looking at value as of July 1st, 2024? The other aspect of this is what's called the taxable status date. So essentially, for any roll, the assessor looks at whatever physically exists as of March 1st each year. March 1st is also the date for which people must legally apply for exemptions if they think they're eligible for something. And again, since we're coming up on March 1st, if there's anyone out there who was considering applying for an exemption, please, please, please make sure you get your exemption to the assessor's office by March 1st. Again, that's the legal date that the assessor's office can receive it each year. If you forget to do that, the assessor's office can't look at your exemption application until the following roll year.
So first is Saturday.
So
Friday
it
the
would
date
be
or
Monday. So it would be Monday, yeah. So a couple of extra days, but again, it's less than a week from now. So
Yeah.
if you're thinking that you're eligible, make sure you get it in no later than this coming Monday. Again, just to recap, the assessment that you'll see on that notice will represent 100% of market value, with market value having been established as of July 1st, 2024, and whatever physically existed as of March 1st, 2025, included in that number. So, of course, we haven't hit March 1st yet. So this is actually on the following slide, but I'll say it now so that it makes sense. Those numbers still possibly can change. It's very likely that many of them won't, but if a property is undergoing any kind of new construction, that new construction may not be completely included in the assessed value, or if there's demolition, same thing there. And because exemption applications are still in the works, they haven't been fully submitted, they haven't been fully reviewed, there also could be effects on estimated taxes based on exemptions that are not accounted for. So when it comes to the actual disclosure, the disclosure notice, let me describe the process. People, of course, are very keen to learn how the change in assessment will affect their taxes. So what this process does is it says, okay, we know everyone's assessed value from the 2024 roll. That was the basis of the tax bill that you recently received, I'm going to say mid-December of 2024. A combined county, town, school, and in Shelter Island, there is a library district and a fire district, as I recall. So you get, every property owner gets a combined bill. Well, that's a known quantity. The tax rates are known. It's known what people actually paid on that bill or would have been levied. So no one can predict future taxes. As Judith rightly said, we don't know at this time what the budgets are going to be for your forthcoming 2025 bill in December, be that county, town, or school. So what this process does is it says, okay, we're going to take these new preliminary assessed values and whatever exemption information is currently available, and we're going to use that to redistribute the taxes that were just billed in December of 2024. So I want to be very clear, this is not a prediction of future taxes. It's saying, here are the taxes that were actually levied, and this is how they would have been redistributed had everyone's new assessment been in place. That's the purpose of the notice. Now, when each of you as property owners receive this notice, you will, of course, and I'm sorry, can I ask you to go to the next slide? Thank you. So, again, this has the point I was making earlier, that new construction, demolition exemptions may not be reflected yet. But it's also possible that the new preliminary 2025 assessment could change between now and the tentative roll, which again, that's issued for May 1st. So whether there's new construction, demolition, or the more likely possibility is that you as a property owner look at that number. And again, the real homework here for each one getting that notice, receiving that notice, is to say, look, do I think the market value indicator by my 2025 preliminary assessment, do I think that's reasonable? Again, market value is being established as of July 1st, 2024. But do I think that's a reasonable number? Do I think my property is worth that? Do I think I would sell it for that if I were putting my property out for market? I'm not suggesting anyone is, but that's really the conversation that people want to have when they get this notice. Now, of course, if you think that the market value indicated by the assessment, that it's reasonable, it's about right, well, there's nothing really that you have to do. You could, Judith referenced the informal review meetings. I will talk about those a little bit as well. You could certainly, and people choose to do this, you could say, well, I want to make an appointment because, I think the value is reasonable, but I just want to get a sense of how that value was established. That's completely fair. Now, of course, if you feel, again, reasonably, that your market value is overstated, you want to call to schedule an appointment with the assessor's office to have an informal review meeting. I'm going to make the assumption here that if you feel your value is too low, you're probably not going to say anything. Sometimes that does happen, but generally people are more concerned if they feel their value is too high. Now, again, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm in no position to make judgments about individual values, but sincerely, what you would want to do is call to schedule an informal review meeting where you can have a discussion with Judith, with Pat, the assessor's office, to say, look, I think my value is too high, but the important point here is you don't want to come in and simply say my value is too high. You want to come in with some kind of documentation, some kind of evidence that supports your belief that your value is too high. Now, since these values were based on comparable sales, you may want to look at listings of property, and I believe that the town does have properties that sold, that's publicly available. So that's certainly a resource. You can look to see what properties that you feel are similar to your own have sold for. You can also look at assessments of other property. I believe what the town is going to do, again, as I mentioned, the town's tentative roll does not come out until May 1st. But what the town, I believe, is planning to do is to run a series of what are called cross-reference listings that would likely be in section, block, and lot, or tax map number order. It would also likely be in owner's name order, and another one probably by property location. I would think those will be available on the town's website. There also could be physical copies available at town hall, or, say some places do this at libraries or places where they could commonly be viewed. And people can use that to get a sense to compare properties that they feel are similar to their own. Now, again, if someone is doing a comparison, you want to look at properties that are reasonably similar to your own. Similar building style, similar neighborhood, square footage of living area, land size, things of that nature. You may not find exact matches, but that's really the best way to approach this. Looking at what properties similar to yours have been valued at, and whether you think yours in turn is reasonably valued. Again, relative to the informal review meetings, once you get your notice, you can call the assessor's office. We do have copies of a cover letter that will accompany the assessment disclosure notice. That has limited space, so there's always a cover letter that accompanies that. Folks who are here can pick up a copy of that. That has a lot of information about the background of the analysis, the logistics of the informal review meetings. Again, you want to call to schedule one of those meetings. I believe the deadline for scheduling a meeting runs through March 28th. And I believe that you can, if you can't physically come in to meet with Judith or folks in the assessor's office, I believe that informal review meetings can be conducted by phone or even virtually. So there's going to be every effort to accommodate anyone who wants to talk about their new assessment. Again, I certainly encourage everyone to look, to carefully consider the notice that you get, the assessment disclosure notice, and read the accompanying cover letter for all the information it has. And again, if you want to talk about it, I encourage you to avail yourself of an informal review meeting. Judith spoke about exemptions. Because the town is now going to be at 100%, those folks who are still receiving a STAR exemption, which is something you actually see on your tax bill, those exemption amounts have increased. They've been recertified at $59,500 for basic STAR and $169,000 for enhanced STAR, which is the version that folks who are over 65 or older can receive. I will have to say, I've got it here, I don't want to neglect mentioning it, that for those folks who are receiving STAR credit checks, and there's probably an ever-increasing number of those folks because since 2016, unless you had been previously receiving the STAR exemption, from 2016 on, anyone who buys a property automatically goes into the STAR credit check program. So you get a benefit. In fact, each year, typically the benefit is slightly more for folks in the credit check program. I won't go into the reasons why, but there's essentially a cap on the benefit that exemption recipients receive, whereas there can be, it's not guaranteed, but there can be a slight increase in that benefit to folks in the STAR credit check program. And the bottom line is that folks in that credit check program will receive a check from the New York State Department of Tax and Finance for your STAR benefit within the 30-day interest-free period you have for paying your property tax. So folks presumably should have received that, I would say, by mid-January. since the bills in Suffolk are generally issued around December 10th, give or take a couple of days. So that's the highlights. One very important point that I want to offer in terms of, because again, realistically, people are always very concerned, what is the tax impact going to be? So while we don't have the specific letters or the charts showing shifting, there is something that we could tell based on the overall change in assessed values in your taxable roll sections. And by that, we mean roll section 1 and roll section 6. Roll section 6 is very, very minimal, that's utility. Roll section 1 is really where all of the town's value is actually taxable. So we were able to observe the aggregate change from 2024 to these 2025 preliminary assessments. So okay, so I'm sorry, can you just go to the next slide, please? Yes, here we go. So that the average change in level, the average change of the town's overall roll from 2024 to 2025, as you'll see, it's about 1.57 times. Now, again, taxes can be kind of a difficult thing to talk about, because as I said earlier, nobody knows what's going to happen with county, town, or school budgets for 2025. So the way I like to talk about this is, look, when you get your assessment disclosure notice, and it will show the relative taxes that you paid in 2024 and the redistributed taxes, but another way of looking at it is how has your assessment changed? The average change in level in the town is about 1.57. So the closer that your assessed value changes from 2024 to 2025, the closer that change, the actual mathematical change, is to 1.57, the more likely it is that your taxes are not going to change much. I'm not going to stand here and tell you they won't change at all, but it shouldn't be a major difference. Now, the same observations can be made going in either direction. The more the difference is, the greater the change in level of your property above 1.57. So I'm going to exaggerate for effect. Let's say that the change in level of your property is 3 times. Well, chances are your property taxes are going to be going up. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but the more that the change in level is over 1.57, the more likely it is that property tax will increase on your property. By the same token, if your change in level is less than 1.57, there's a good likelihood, absent budgetary changes, that you're going to see your property taxes go down. Again, I'm not going to speak to the magnitude, but it probably will go down a little bit. Again, hypothetically, if the average change in level is 1.57, which is what we saw, and I'm going to exaggerate for effect again, let's say that your assessment didn't change. The change in level of your property is 1, didn't change at all. Well, I would expect your property tax would go down. Again, it's all going to be relative. You have a question?
No, you answered the good question, okay?
Okay.
I just interrupt for 1 minute, okay?
Yeah, sure.
When you get this document that comes out in March, will there be a tax roll attached to that so you can see your comparables around you so that you can evaluate your increase to someone down the street? Like, how are you able to do that unless you have a tax roll?
Right. So I don't believe there are any plans to send out the comparable sales sheets that were used.
You talked about it there for a second. I thought that's what you were referring to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the tentative roll is going to be issued May 1st. An official roll can't be issued at this time because the assessments are still subject to change, as are exemptions. However, Yeah, what I was trying to get at, and I'm sorry if it wasn't clear, I believe there are plans to publish what are called cross-references.
Whose plans?
I believe that the town will be doing that. That'll be done, that can be generated through the assessor's office.
Okay.
So the cross-reference is simply a one-line listing, and I believe the plan will be to have different ordering of those. So there would be one that's in section, block, and lot order, one that would seemingly be by owner's name alphabetically, and another, this is what I see towns typically do in these circumstances, one by address, property address, so you can look locationally. And this is a one-line listing. Included in that one-line listing will be the 2024 final assessment and the 2025 preliminary assessment. Again, it's not a roll, but at this point in time, it would be current with the assessments that are going out in these disclosure letters. So certainly that's going to, and I think that'll be available on the town's website, plus physical copies at town hall, possibly elsewhere. So those are certainly ways that somebody can, at least do a preliminary look in terms of, well, I think this property down the street is very similar to mine. Let me look that up and see how it compares to my assessment. If someone is interested in seeing actual comparable sales, a comparable sales sheet, that's something that you'd want to schedule an informal review meeting to do.
When you were discussing this earlier on one of the slides, you had it by area. So you had it, you said it was the average of that area. So that average of that area, it would include waterfront within that area as well?
Yes.
So you're not handling waterfront as a separate entity?
No.
Or inland property as a separate entity? You're handling those sections? So in Silver Beach, you're including waterfront and interior properties to come up with that average, okay?
Yeah, and vacant land. So
I see.
everything
So-
except commercial.
So even though our inland properties seem to have had the larger increase, and the waterfront seemed to be the lower percentage of increase from year to year, we're averaging the both of them together. Okay, got it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'll just add a little to that. At the end of the day, the taxing jurisdiction is the town. The taxes that are being generated for town, county, school, and special district purposes, they're all being done town-wide. Again, the town issues the assessment roll, the town is the taxing jurisdiction. So certainly, the kind of comparison that Judith showed you, that's a way of looking at changes, but overall, in terms of taxes, the taxes are going to be distributed town-wide. So it's not like there's a different tax rate for Bay Beach versus Deering Harbor or anything like that. Right.
Quick question. The tax bill that I just paid in January, on it was a full assessment number. Then there was the total assessed value and the differential. So will that full market value number change? Or is that what I should expect to see in May?
It could. So here's the thing, and this gets back to the lady who was speaking earlier, who was concerned, as I heard it, that this was simply going to be mathematically factoring the assessments from their level at 68 up to 100. If that's the way this was done, then what you're asking about, that is what you would see. You would see the same full value. The reason the project is being done is that given the change in the market, given the change over the last 4 years, one can't say across the board that the market values of those assessments from 4 years ago, factored up to 100, represent actual market value. Market value is being measured as of the point in time of July 1st, 2024. So here's the thing, if hypothetically market values did not change at all, what you are describing could be done. But The reality is there's a recognition that market values have changed. So the only way to capture that is to do the reappraisal reassessment that the town undertook.
Okay. Mainly because that full market value that was in my bill for last year is based on 2023.
Yeah, essentially, here's the thing, unless there had been a change to your individual assessment, it could have been the same assessed value that was determined for the last reassessment in 2021.
Probably was. Yeah. Probably was.
It was.
That's the case with most properties,
Yeah.
2021. So.
Got it.
And so I don't forget, I think that I covered all of the points. But I know a gentleman had asked, I think this gentleman had asked about the tax cap. So, yeah, the tax cap has been in place for quite a while. I think that came in under Governor Cuomo. It basically limits, I think the amount can vary, but the goal is to keep property taxes high taxing jurisdictions. So each taxing jurisdiction, town, county, school district, has the right, if you will, to say, yeah, we're going to maintain the tax cap, whether that's 2% or something under that, depending on the numbers that are determined each year. My understanding is that in any given year, an individual taxing jurisdiction can vote to exceed the property tax cap. My understanding is it doesn't happen often. I think you actually said it in your comments that the goal of the tax cap was to try to put a limit, if you will, on property tax, because property tax in New York, well, it's high. So it's a goal, if you will, to say, hey, look, we want to try to limit this to a maximum of 2% for each taxing jurisdiction each year. But there are instances, I can't think of a specific one down here, maybe one has happened, where a taxing jurisdiction says, look, we have a set of circumstances where we've got to vote to exceed the property tax in that particular year.
Well, Shelter Island might be an example.
I'm sorry, what? No, I'm sorry, I missed what you said.
Oh, I said Shelter Island
You had to do
is an
that.
example.
Yes, okay.
So the 2% is an aggregate number? Because I couldn't figure it out even looking up the law. Because it looked as though no one should expect outside of New York City to have their property taxes increase more than 2% in a year. That's not the way it works, is what you're saying.
Well, here's the thing, this can be a bit confusing, to say the least. Because
John, if you could turn this way, just because the microphones
I
are here.
apologize. So forgive my back. So here's the thing. A taxing jurisdiction, whether it's a town, a county, or, well, the town, no, because the town is self-contained. So let's say, and I won't use the school district because the Shelter Island School District is contained within the town. Let's take the county. So let's say the county says, yep, in terms of our budget, we're adhering to, again, let's just take the 2% to keep it a nice round number. We're not raising our budget any more than 2%. However, the county's taxes are apportioned. So there are a variety of things that go into the budget, and this is true of any taxing jurisdiction. Then there are a variety of things that go into the tax levy, which is the amount of taxes that are actually collected through the property tax. So there have been situations, so I work with places, we're called the Southern Region. We cover everything from Delaware, Greene, and Dutchess County down through the island. And invariably, there are situations where the budget has remained the same, and the taxing jurisdiction, I won't pick on anybody, taxing jurisdiction says, look, we did a really great job, our budget hasn't changed. But maybe the amount of non-property tax revenue has decreased for whatever reason. Maybe if it's a school district that has more than one town, the apportionment between those two town segments has changed. So even though, could be changes in the equalization rate. Maybe one town is seen as going up in value more than the other. So their segment becomes responsible for a slightly higher share than the other town. So it is possible that even if a municipality complies or adheres to the tax cap, that sometimes there are situations where the taxes can still change. Again, I wouldn't expect that for the town tax. I wouldn't expect it for Shelter Island's school tax because that's wholly contained. But something like that could possibly, I'm not saying will occur, but it could occur for the county tax because county tax has to be apportioned amongst 10 different municipalities. And even if the county's budget is the same, depending on how that's apportioned based on the full value of each town, that could potentially change a town's share of the county tax. I hope that made a little sense. It does get a little confusing, unfortunately.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So John, what we're really coming to, okay, is that the town budget is really is gonna really determine what the tax bill will be. Mr. Cohen presents the whole issue of a 2% cap. That's the goal that every town should be working towards, okay? And, the town may be 2%, but a library could be 3%, a school could be 4%, and that will change that overall thing. But from the municipality's point of view, we should always be looking at trying to not spend more money we can't spend more than we have, okay? And we should, the goal should be to keep the budgets below that 2% cap, unless we have other revenues that are coming in that can offset it through grants or whatever else might be.
Look, it's not my place to say, but I would hope that would really be the goal of any taxing jurisdiction. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, budgets and of course the resulting tax levies, and again, there are circumstances where a levy can increase even if a budget does not. And maybe the non-property tax revenue has dropped in that particular year. So property taxes can change from one year to another, but yeah, ultimately, the budget is seen as the primary determining factor in property taxes that need to be collected.
We don't shoot the assessor, okay, because she didn't do anything wrong, okay?
No.
It's really, it's the budgets that are put together and,
Yeah, the budgets are not the purview of the assessor, and in fact, so I don't neglect to say this. I really want to give Judith and Pat and Lauren as much acknowledgement as I can. They did a tremendous, tremendous amount of work to make this project happen. And the other thing that that should be acknowledged is that they did this all in-house. They saved the town a tremendous, and I mean tremendous, amount of money. If the town had sought to get a vendor, and there are companies that do reassessment work, even if that cost was $100 per parcel, which is probably a very low ball figure, it would probably be at least $150, if not more. But at $100 a parcel, you're talking about $350,000. So I can't give Judith and Pat and Lauren enough credit for the hard work they did. And I also have to, in the same breath, give all of you credit because you supported it. And, the town board should be commended for doing that. Reassessment, I can honestly say it's not popular. In Suffolk County, we've really only had 2 municipalities reassess in recent memory, Southampton and Shelter Island. Southampton hasn't been doing it. I think they stopped in 2021, similar to Shelter Island. And the more time that goes by from a prior reassessment, the harder it is to get momentum to do it, because people become more and more anxious about the potential effects and shifting. I will say that reassessment, without trying to sound mom and apple pie, reassessment is considered a sign of good governance. So the town board deserves credit because you really are doing everything within the town's power to ensure that the property tax is being distributed as fairly as it can based on the standard of current property value. I'll say it again, based in this case from 25, with value being set of July 1st, 2024. So both the assessor's office and all of you deserve a lot of credit for supporting this. And I think the intention is to maintain 100% in subsequent years. You know, that's wonderful news. And we're certainly happy to work with you however you see fit to help accomplish that. So again, my thanks to Judith and Pat and Laura for all the work they did and all of you for supporting it.
Your praise of Judith, Pat, and Lauren is very significant, Laurel. Very significant only because you see this all over the state. You know how it works, so we thank you.
Yes.
Does anybody else have more questions? Because I can put up my last slide maybe.
Yeah, I also just wanted to say something. I think as far as like, there's been a lot of information thrown at everyone today. And so, Christina, if you could pull up Judith's presentation again. Once this deck gets posted on the town website, the slides that I think people should really take a close look at are slide number 8. If you could go to that one, Christina. Yeah, this one, because there's a lot of misconception out there about how the tax rate will be determined. And so this really shows that if we're starting with a total town assessed value of $10 million, or no, not 10, the budget's 10, 500,000, and we move up to double that, which is almost where we are at 1.57, and go to $1 billion from 500, that the tax rate gets calculated off that. So it goes from a $20 per $1,000 assessed value tax rate to $10. So the math is very simply laid out there. So I think that's a very helpful slide for people. If you could switch over to slide 11. What I wanted to point out on this one is there's 3 lines in particular. 2023 with the tax rate, which was right off of our town budget, the 6 point, town budgets, county, fire, the total budget, 6.6268. You were paying taxes in 2023 if your house was assessed at $1 million at $6,626. Next line shows that with the tax rate that year, budget increases, it went up to $6,979. And then if you skip the next line and go to the assessed value of $1,000,057. So John's slide had said that our factor in total for the entire townwide assessment was a 1.57. So if your house was previously assessed at 1 million, it's now going to, if everything was equal, 1.57 million. Your tax is going to 6,670. And the reason there's actually a little bit of a decrease there, because that's confusing, is like, why would it actually be going down? Is because there are properties that have been added, new construction, there's been home improvements. So the whole total tax pie got bigger, so that's why things went down a little bit. And that's if there were no budget increases. So that's a very helpful slide. If you could go back to slide 10. And I'm talking about these because Judith and I spent some time this morning. She went over this with me. And I'm trying to just this is what people want to know, what is going to happen with my tax bill. So I wanted to highlight these particular slides because these really do help you understand. This slide here, if we look at Hay Beach, and this is showing the total Hay Beach assessed value of $493 million. Going up to $827 million. That increase for Hay Beach, and there are waterfront properties as well as water view, as well as inland properties, but the entire increase,
And vacant.
Oh, and vacant land, yes, thank you. That increase did not go up by the 1.57, the 57% increase. It actually went up by 68% because in particular inland properties increased so much. So if you take that 68% increase and the average home value in that neighborhood of 2.2 million, Christine, if you flip to slide 12, you see the 2025 value of $2.2 million there. On your 2024 tax bill, if we went back the 68%, your house was getting assessed at $1,312,000. So your taxes that year, and these are just, average values, so everybody's got to factor in their own house, your taxes was $9,164. Your new tax, we're basing it on the 2024 budget, so you'd think, oh, okay, it should be exactly the same. You actually increased your tax bill by $207. The reason being is we had a 57% increase in the total pie, but Hay Beach had a 68%. So that's why you're seeing a little bit of a bump up there. If you go back, Christina, to slide 10 again, and just looking at the next line, Ram Island, where the 52% is what that increased. So the increase in values for Ram Island, looking at individual assessments, home, price, comparable sales and things like that, actually went down. So the average neighborhood price, 3.263914, flip to slide 12. You see that number again on the 2025 value. So all things being equal, your home value last year was $2,147,000. It's now up to $3,263,000. Last year's taxes was just shy of $15,000. Next year's taxes, if the budget was exactly the same, is going to be $13,867. So you're actually seeing a decrease of $1,121. So I wanted to just sort of harp on that because as you're getting these notices next week, and you start to look at these are the slides that you want to go and take a look at. It's the start of trying to figure out how do I fare in what is going on. And then you can then go take the next step of getting that summary report that will be on the town website to see what are the other comparables. Because if you're a waterfront property, you may have a slightly different, like your taxes might go down a little bit more because waterfront properties didn't go up as much as inland properties did. So I just wanted to highlight those because there's so much information out there. And I just wanted to focus in on what I thought were the key slides. And Judy did a great job pulling this together. So is there anyone at the table who wants to ask any questions before I open it up to
Well, the only thing that you got to remember is that that's based on no increase in taxes. It's a zero. So, I mean, the likelihood of that is.
budget, on a budget, no increase in anybody's budget. So if the the county, the town, fire district, library, and school, if they all had a 5% budget increase, take that 2025 number and add 5% to it. Is there anyone Bob, if you want to come up?
To think that the assessor's office really ought to be praised for buoying the crowd. No, it really was a tremendous amount of work. I can imagine, I actually can't imagine what kind of work it was to do this. The one thing that comes out of, for me, is it seems to be there's a lot of the real work here, or the real result here has to do with the relative values of properties, okay? And we've seen charts here concerning various parts of the island, Silver Beach versus this versus that. It seems to be the one big demarcation, I think Gordon had alluded to it earlier, that is waterfront properties is one animal, and inland properties, or another, even if it's just across the street or something that has no view or on the golf course. There are various ways of cutting this. We haven't had much insight into the process of actually doing the evaluation of 3,400 properties or something like that. There was a lot of work involved in doing that, but give us some insight in terms of your process that went along into going into each neighborhood and coming up with these relative values. I mean, you don't want to use 5 comps on the waterfront to assess an inland property.
Absolutely not. Okay, good question. So, to your question, we take the sales of waterfront, we compare to waterfront. Inland properties, we do inland only. So, for waterfront, we try to choose the best ones we try to use your neighborhood first. If we don't have enough sales in your neighborhood, we move on to, okay, if this is not if you don't have enough sales in this neighborhood, where's the next place that you would purchase a home? Would it be comparing Grand Island to, say, Silver Beach, or the Heights to South Ferry? You know, like where would you go next? And we do this, we apply that same methodology to inland properties, right? So you are in the center, let's say. If we don't have enough sales in the center, where would we go next? We go to the Westmoreland area, would we go to the Shorewood area? We try our best to choose 3 comparable sales that are most similar in fashion to your home and your location. We try to compare square footage, number of bedrooms, bathrooms, you have a pool, you don't have a pool, tennis court, no tennis court. What else does your property have to offer that we can compare to another property that's of similar amenities?
Judith, with the ADUs, how do you handle accessory dwellings, just out of curiosity?
So that's, right now, we are assessing them as dependent residences or cabins or bungalows on the property. And we're listing them as improvements right now. I believe within the next few years, I'm going to try to take them from being improvements and just an improved value on your property, like it adds value to the property. But I think we're going to shift it from being just, if it's a full ADU with a full kitchen, bathroom, total living area, it would end up being house 1 or site 1 and site 2. Yeah.
It has to reflect that income producing aspect of it.
Right.
Absolutely, but right now we try to compare apples to apples. So again, going to the comparison part of it, we try to do houses with ADUs or, we call them dependent residences. So we'll try to compare houses with dependent residences to other houses with dependent residences.
But right now, you're not doing it that right now,
We do try, yes,
Okay.
yes, absolutely.
but not the income part of it.
No, and that for residential would not be the best way to do it. We don't do income that way. Income and expense is reserved mostly for commercial properties. So residential properties are by comparable size or cost if it's a new construction.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Before I go to the Zoom audience, I'll finish up with the physical audience. Come on up forward, Robert.
Thank you.
Get your name again for the record.
Sure, Robert Harper. When I was looking at the assessed values or the market values, there didn't seem to be any negative numbers up there. So I'm assuming that the overall market values on the island have gone up, and it looked like, unless I missed a point, that some of them went up really significantly. So that to me would imply that the overall tax revenue for the town is going to go up also, correct?
No, because it's all based on the budgets. So so we still have, so our assessed values went from being 4 billion to 6 billion, right? Rough numbers. But the budget's still total right now, 27 million. So as long as our budgets are still at 27 million or whatever, 27,
Right.
21 million, the taxes should have no change. That's
Okay.
Slide number 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand. As someone who worked in a school district, and I also have a degree in educational administration, I worked a lot with budgets and things, and when more money became available, as if like our state aid went up or whatever, we just spent more. So knowing that this pot could increase, well, it's true.
Sounds like my household budget.
There you go. You can compare it to that too. When we had some more money or we had a pay raise, we would increase the amount of things we could do. So the potential for increasing that pot of money for the overall tax revenue, let's say, there's a potential there for that to increase because of these assessed values going up.
No, because that's still going to be based on the budgets
Right, but
that are
the
being.
potential is there. Therefore, what's to prevent somebody from saying, let's say I'm a school administrator. I think there's a whole lot of equity here and there's the potential for a lot of money in that pot. So why don't I just submit a much larger budget than the one I was planning on?
And that would increase the tax bill
Right,
on the people.
yes,
Yes.
and
That belongs to the town board. What you're really saying is, will the town board look at it as a revenue producing? That's what you're asking.
I can't say that. I thought it was safe to say school. You're smarter than I am.
Getting across the
In
street.
the context of a school district,
Mhm.
I would think that the school district's voters would be cognizant of that when they vote on the budget. And they would say, well, gee, the budget is going up, do I really want to vote for this?
Mhm.
That'd be my 2 cents.
Christine, can I just screen share for a second? I'm going to bring up the page that the town looks at when we are pulling our budgets together.
Sure, while you're looking at that, based on the market value assessments of the homes on the island, do you multiply that out and come up with a figure of what tax revenue could be raised potentially? You don't do that. So
No.
is there a reason?
There's no, we're not trying to predict
Yeah,
the future taxes.
the assessor's office has nothing to do with taxes. Even though I think that's a common misperception.
Okay,
The assessor's office, and the job of the assessor is to determine the value of the property. The taxes are the responsibility of each individual taxing jurisdiction, county, town, school, special districts. They have to decide how much money they need to do their job. That translates into a budget. And then depending on the amount of non-property tax revenue, the difference represents the property tax levy. The
Sure.
assessor has zero relationship to that.
No, I understand that perfectly.
If you
I
look
just,
at the screen that I pulled up, Robert, in
Yeah,
answer to
sure.
your earlier question,
Yeah.
this is page 3 of the town budget, which is on the town website.
Mhm.
And so when the town board is looking at this, we are looking at, this is the 2025 budget, we're looking at what our total appropriations are, we're looking at what our total revenues are, any fund balances polls that we're using, and what has to be raised from taxes, and then we look at the percentage change. That 7.8%, that's the number we're looking at. We don't ever look at exactly what the tax rate is going to be. We are looking only at what is the impact going to be budget-wise on the taxpayers. So whatever changes with assessment, we're not looking at that. We're looking purely at what we're bringing in and spending and what that percentage increase is going to be, because this number of 12,748,583, that's our impact, and that number gets used to calculate the tax rate. But we don't take it to the next step for various reasons. Like, this is the number we care about, the 7.8%.
Sure. Based as a homeowner, I would just think, because I can't spend the equity in my house on taxes. It doesn't do me any good unless I sell it. I would want to know the other way around. I would want to know how much money I'm bringing in, and then I would base my budget on that so that I don't exceed the money that I have available. But I understand it. I just, all right, thank you.
And we do look at that, because things change. We've had, like, mortgage tax, it goes up and down year in and year out. And so some years there is a bigger percentage increase because we've got less mortgage tax coming in. Other years we do get the benefit, and so we can use that to keep the tax rate down lower. Any other questions from the physical audience? Tom?
Just have a real quick. Speaking of exemptions, I didn't see volunteer fire in the exemptions, and is that
You're right.
tied in with STAR, or is that different?
No, it is separate. Good point, yes. So the volunteer fire and ambulance exemptions are also available. Again, those are given to me by fire commissioner and EMS director, and they tell me who is eligible each year for those exemptions. And those that are, you receive those exemptions, and that's a straight 10% off the assessed value for across the board for those exemptions. Thank you.
Anyone else in the physical audience? All right, Kim Noland.
Hi. So this was a very, very good presentation. And, you know, I want to compliment the hard work that has been done, just like everyone else is complimenting it. And could you put up slide 8, please? I'm not even sure if that's the right one. And I understand these are going to be on the website, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the one that has estimates at the bottom, and it shows a
11.
a 4% tax rate. So it must be maybe 11 or 12
It's
there.
number 11, Christina.
Okay. Okay, so estimated. And there it shows rate per thousand, right?
Yes.
And that estimated 4.248. What is that exactly? And what should we be looking at for this upcoming budget? That's $12 million and an increase of 7.8%. What is that 4.2?
It's the growth.
If you look at the last of the pink, the last of the pink lines, the estimated. So the gross assessed value in 24-25 was 3.8 billion. And so the estimate right now that the assessor's office has come up with is going to be 6.357 billion. So if you take the budget, which is the last column there, so the 24-25 amount of budget that had to be raised for taxes for town, school, county, fire district, library, I think I got it all. So that was $27 million. So in 24-25, you took that 27 million and divided by the gross assessed value. And then for
Which
20,
went down actually, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it went from 66 billion down to 63 billion. So if we took
yeah,
the new assessed value, which let's just say that your old assessed value was 3 million and your new assessed value is 1.57 times that. And that's from one of John's slides. So your new assessed value is 4.7 million. And what you would do is you would multiply that by 0.004285. Coming up with $20,000 per year taxes. Did I get that right?
I wasn't following your numbers. Did you get that?
I mean, that's one way to do it. That's one way to do it, yes. But I want to
But is that really like, I just want to, you guys are the experts and I'm just trying to understand the numbers.
So on one of
Because
my
at the end of the day, what we pay is the number,
Yes.
not the explanation of how you caught it. So I'm trying to use what things you've given us so that I can arrive at my number. And what I'm doing is simply using your average, which is take the current assessment, multiply it by 1.57 times, come up with your new assessment and multiply it by the estimated tax rate at the bottom line of this slide. Because frankly, that is a tax rate that is very actually good from the perspective of many people who have been following this, because it is quite different from 6.9796, which is right above it. And that's like a significant decrease in tax rate, Amber. And I'm just asking, when that is estimated, if that is likely, that is very good news. And I really want to focus on this tax rate point because it is the critical one.
But if you're looking at the bottom part of the slide, a house that was assessed at $1 million is now going to be assessed at $1,570,000. So
Okay,
you're paying taxes last year of $6,979. If you had the same, nobody had an increase in their budget, they'd be paying $6,670. So while the tax rate has dropped, your assessed value has gone up. So the scales,
Some go down, some go
Some
up.
will go down.
Right.
Some will go up.
yeah.
Right, see, here's the thing, I would caution you in terms of the use of the 1.57. I really would not use that to try to predict taxes, which is kind of what I was hearing, and if I'm mistaken, I apologize. The 1.57 is the average change from the 2024 roll to the 2025 roll. So it's simply a very general way of saying, well, the more my assessment goes up more than 1.57 times, well, that suggests that I'm going to see a tax increase. The less my assessment goes up below, if you will, 1.57, that suggests I may have a tax decrease to some extent. If I'm right around 1.57, it suggests my taxes would be about the same. But again, the caution here is this is all based, all of this analysis, when it comes to the taxes, it's based on a redistribution of the 2024 taxes actually paid. We don't know what the 2025 taxes will be. Hopefully they won't be too different, but we don't know. So the 1.57
Okay,
is
so,
really
so
more
you
about
can't
assessment.
just. So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
basically, yeah, so, okay, so I understand all the, I do think I do understand the numbers now. Thank you, John.
Sure.
Because basically what it's saying is you can't really tell until you get your March 1st letter. And then you'll be able to, but within the context of the March 1st letter, you will be assured that the tax rate is going to be the 0.0042.
There's no assurance of that because it's still subject to change based on the budgets, right? So this is an estimated tax rate based upon last year's 2024 budget and our new assessed value. And I would also like to point out too that if you see on one of this current slide shows 6.3 billion. The other slide showed 6.7 billion. The 6.3 billion is the taxable amount. 6.7 is the overall assessment roll. So there's, that's the nonprofits that are the difference. That's the difference there. And the town.
Okay, so I hear this, and as long as I have the floor, I kind of take back what I was saying about the good news because I see now that those numbers are not, they're not exactly what we should be using even at this moment in time on February 25th. I would also point out that, I think it's a huge job. And, you guys are pretty good at it, of going through 3,500 or however many parcels there are, and being able to kind of do this work on, like my little example. I mean, lots of different valuation things can happen over the course of the length of time. And so I guess I have one hopeful question, which is, for those people who have had things happen or do have evidence of market value in terms of an actual sale of the property, when they come in to talk to you, will you accord them due deference about the fact that there are individual things going on and the work that you customarily do for people, which is to, really compare market values? Well, in the form of a question, will you listen?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yes. I am here
Well,
for
thank you.
anybody who has any questions.
Yeah, thank you a lot.
I'll just add, that's the whole point of the informal review process.
Yes. We want to verify that we have everything about your property correct. We want to verify every single aspect of it, square footage, bedroom count, bathroom count, whatever it may be. Do we have your pool off by a couple square feet? Whatever it is, let's go through your property and make sure we're properly assessing it.
Thank you.
Pam, you had a question?
Yeah, hi, Judith. This one's for you, actually. I was looking at your new values, the slide you put up, and I just noticed that you have houses and you have vacant and you have other. But you didn't, it doesn't seem like you slotted out vacant with improvements. Out of that 608 parcels there, all you're saying are vacant. And I know there are multiple properties on Shelter Island that are vacant with improvements. I suppose you have done reassessments or revaluations on those two. You just didn't separate it out on the slide?
Yes, no, I didn't separate them out on the slide. That includes vacant with improvement. So vacant piece of property with a bulkhead or just a garage or a shed, dock, anything. So they're all included in that.
Okay, so that's going to be hard to do a comparable on then with others, but we'll take a look. And then the other question, my other question was about this, I guess is for the town board, is how the new construction at the library will fit in. Their budget for their new construction is going to fit into the library budget, and how that might affect any of this reassessment that's going on with the tax rates and such.
It's going to be another line on the budget, in the tax line. It'll have just the debt for the debt service for the library. So it will be its own independent line, so you'll be able to see the impact of that directly.
So at this point, we don't really know how that's going to affect the reassessments.
It has no
Going
impact on the
forward.
reassessments.
Well, isn't the library construction part of the library budget? And the library budget is part of the tax rates that are determined?
It will affect the tax rate.
Yeah, it affects the tax rate.
It will not affect the assessments, but it will affect the tax rate.
I have to think.
Right, sorry, I'm sorry. I know I misspoke on that. It does get a little confusing between tax rate and assessments, and I do know the difference. Yeah, it would affect the tax rate then, so we're not certain how that's going to implicate any of this, are we?
Is there anyone else in Zoom who has a question? Okay. Thank you both so very much.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good presentation.
Thank you.
All right, next agenda.
No.
Next agenda item. We'll let things settle down.
Sorry you had to wait so long, Tim.
I was gonna say, the next agenda item is tree preservation and why it is important, and we have Green Options Committee Chair Tim Pertel and John Davies in support, or it's hanging out in the background.
Okay.
Okay, I'm Tim Pertel, and today I'm representing a subcommittee that was formed, a town subcommittee that was formed 1.5 years ago, and I'm going to talk about a proposal for tree protection on private property. Just some background before I get to the slide deck. 1.5 years ago at a Tuesday town board meeting, our board member, Jim Colligan, talked about water conservation and what measures could be taken to increase recharge to our sole source aquifer. After a discussion about how trees provide a natural way to promote recharge and control runoff, among other benefits, Jim organized a subcommittee to investigate how to approach tree preservation on private as well as public property, with the goal of, and this is important, with a goal of balancing property rights and tree protection. He suggested a focus on nearshore and other sensitive areas of the island. Jim asked me to chair the subcommittee, and he asked Dan Clark and Sean Davey to join. Some introductions. I'm chair of the town of Shoulder Island Green Options Advisory Committee and a member of the Community Preservation Fund Advisory Board. I'm also head of Shoulder Island Friends of Trees, a nonprofit that for years has collaborated with the town planting trees in public spaces. I just want to be clear that my role in the subcommittee is not related to Friends of Trees, nor is this effort. Dan Clark is a member of the Conservation Advisory Council, and he's a certified arborist. And Sean Davey, who is sitting over here by the window, is a retired financial services executive who has had a home here for over 20 years. He's been engaged in preservation and conservation efforts for years and has served on the Neshomic Board and the board of the Silver Beach Association. Our subcommittee was tasked with investigating how Shoulder Island could provide stronger protections for trees in a way that balances property rights and preservation. And I just want to add that we already do have a tree code on the books, but it really provides oversight for public trees on public property. There's nothing that protects trees on private property. We did not have to look far for examples of how towns and municipalities oversee preservation. Both Southampton and East Hampton have had tree codes for many years. North Haven recently updated and refined their code. Sag Harbor passed a code in 2023. Southold is currently pursuing a tree code. Aside from looking at East End codes, we also examined codes in Nassau, towns, and other locations to come up with ideas for a code that could be applied to Shoulder Island. And now we can go to the slide deck, please. We can actually go to the next one. So before I jump into how we would sort of try to pursue this, I just want to talk about the value of trees. I don't know if anybody who doesn't like trees, maybe there's some. But trees actually have really important functions on the island and life. Trees promote the absorption of precipitation into our island silt's aquifer. They help control water pollution, erosion, and flooding. This provides essential habitat for wildlife. Trees promote natural, scenic, environmental, and aesthetic values. They are an integral component of our neighborhoods. Trees, particularly older ones, help combat climate change by sequestering carbon. When large trees are removed or healthy woodlands are cleared, it takes decades to replace them. On our island, many of our preserves and undeveloped woodlands have a high density of trees. Our neighborhoods generally have a lower density, and this makes sense. We have homes, garages, people have pools, some homes have tennis courts, so you're going to have less trees. However, there's a greater bucolic and environmental benefit when the moderate density of neighborhood trees is maintained to supplement the areas of high density. And while there are reasons to remove trees, the unnecessary removal of trees or extensive lot clearing of healthy trees is destructive to our local neighborhoods and environmental benefits, including recharge. We take all of our trees for granted, but in the next few years, we will probably lose all of our Native American beech trees. And I think many of us who have traveled in the summertime can see all the lighter areas of the woods. This is going to happen. Because of warmer winters, the southern pine beetle has migrated north and is devastating pitch pines. Climate change could affect other species. So the rationale behind this is trees age, they get diseases, they're damaged by storms, but they are also threatened by us. In recent years, there have been instances of tree clearing for new construction, causing the depletion of the aesthetic and environmental benefits that trees provide to neighborhoods. The purpose of a tree preservation legislation is to prevent the indiscriminate destruction or removal of trees within the boundaries of the town in a way that balances property rights with tree preservation. Very important. This is how do we do this to balance both of those things? The proposed legislation is intended to cover new construction, renovations, and the clearing of undeveloped lots unrelated to construction or renovation that indiscriminately removes trees. This is how it could work. While new construction and renovations involve infrastructure challenges that often lead to the loss of trees, we propose a permitting process that limits within reason the unnecessary removal of healthy trees, specimen, large old trees, landmark or historical trees, and unusual species. We propose a permit application shall be submitted in advance of any clearing for new construction or renovation or for undeveloped lots. To manage this process, the town would create a tree border committee to prevent overtaxing the building department. This committee or board could function similarly to the planning board, the ZBA, or the Conservation Advisory Council. There would be exemptions to all of this. Dead or dying trees, a tree that is dead or has been damaged beyond repair or is in an advanced state of decline. Hazardous tree, any tree that has a condition, disease, or defect that poses an imminent danger to the life or property as determined by the town, an arborist, emergency service worker, such as a police officer or fireman. Homeowners insurance. Some insurers now require the removal of trees, even healthy ones, as a requirement for policy renewal. Storm damage and routine maintenance. Summer and winter storms cause damage that often needs immediate attention. And I'm going to add also the installation of AI septic systems. Sometimes trees are in the way of that process. We don't have to reinvent the wheel as we pursue this, if we pursue this. A Long Island tree preservation regulation has been enacted in Oyster Bay, Huntington, Brookhaven, on the East End in East Hampton, Southampton, North Haven, and Sag Harbor to prevent the indiscriminate harm to trees on private property. Our research finds a variety of approaches to provide tree protections, including formulas that regulate clearing based upon lot size, tree size based upon diameter, and the creation of aquifer protection zones. So this next slide. Shows a formula for tree clearing based on lot size. East Hampton, Southampton, and North Haven have addressed tree preservation with formulas that calculate the amount of clearing permitted in relation to lot size. This formula that's shown on the slide is from Southampton's code. Shoulder Island could create a similar formula. And I might add that each of the three towns have slight variations on the numbers and the percentages. Another way is to go by the tree diameter. Next slide. DBH, or diameter at breast height, which is 4.5 feet from the base of a tree, is a standard method to measure trees. Some municipalities use DBH in their preservation codes. Sag Harbor requires a permit to remove a tree with a DBH of 12 inches or greater. North Haven's code requires a permit for a native tree with a DBH of 19 inches or greater. And by the way, the reason that Sag Harbor goes with DBH is because many of their lots are small, less than an acre, and so it made no sense to go with a lot size formula. North Haven actually does use a lot size formula, but the mayor was unhappy with the fact that even with that formula, large native trees were still being removed. Great aquifer protection zones. Southampton created an aquifer protection overlay district to regulate land use in areas which were found to be water catchment regions. This concept expands the goals of Southampton's town master plan and the policy of their town board to promote water recharge and prevent degradation of their sole source aquifer. Southampton uses the lot size formula to oversee clearing within their overlay districts. Shoulder Island could also create aquifer protection zones in sensitive areas. If this were to happen and there was a tree board, we could become a resource. A town tree board could help residents navigate ways to preserve trees while tackling new construction or renovation with a location or other infrastructure. Board members could provide recommendations of native species to replace invasive or damaged trees or trees that need to be removed. The board would not dictate what species of tree can or cannot be planted. Many landscapes, including my own, have a mix of native and non-native trees. Should the board decide to move this initiative forward, much of the legwork has been done. The subcommittee met with former town lawyer and has included the head of the building department in meetings. I know we're in the midst of finding a new lawyer, but we actually spent quite a bit of time with Stephen Kiley, and we met with Reed several times. And finally, we welcome comments from our residents. We really want to hear back from people, all their thoughts about this. I guess one question I had is, should they send emails to my town email? Would that be the best way to do this?
Yeah.
Okay,
I like that idea.
and I'm facing a camera, right?
Yeah.
All of you out there listening, you can send any of your thoughts or comments to tpurtell, Purtell, @shelterislandtown.gov. And I will respond. John, do you have any?
Yeah, I could just make a couple of quick comments.
State your name for the record.
I think what Sean Davey, I think just a couple of quick things to accentuate. One is it's really about the trees are a fundamental part of our ecosystem to creating, having a healthy aquifer, and it's just underappreciated. Most people look around and say, we have plenty of trees, what are you worrying about? What you really want is moderate density throughout the island. So not areas of very dense and then none at all. And we're in pretty good shape, but what you're seeing is trends of new construction and renovation where people really just don't value trees at all. And so you're getting lot clearing, you're getting, a lot of things like that. So you have the potential for really reducing the moderate density in different clusters, which is very unhealthy for that local water supply potentially. And I just give you one anecdote because there are certainly people that, have the thing, don't tell me what to do on my property. And the one anecdote that I've told this story to you before is talking to a neighbor in Silver Beach about trees. And I literally got about a sentence out of my mouth and the person said, I have another house further up island and they have tree regulation. And it's ridiculous. I don't want people telling me what to do. And so I completely understood where he was coming from and I backed off and I just started talking about how beautiful this property was. And he happens to have a wooded lot right across the street from him with no house. And I eventually brought this, conversation around again. And I said, gee, is anybody ever going to build across the street? And he said, well, I don't know. God, wouldn't it be horrible if they just cut down all the trees? Because that's like what makes your house so nice. Oh my God, that would be horrible. I wouldn't happen. So it's not really so much about what you're doing. It's about the risk of what your neighbor is doing. And so while the gut reaction is to be defensive about what people are telling you what to do, there are plenty of experiences around the island where somebody buys a lot near you and clears the entire thing and really doesn't, have any concern about, one, the aesthetic value, but they think it's only about aesthetic value. They really don't understand that it's a fundamental part of the ecosystem. So we're trying to raise awareness, bring this into the public domain, and hopefully then, eventually create the momentum so that you'll consider, code changes that, we can apply this in a reasonable manner that just raises the value of trees, but in a workable way for people to be able to still do what they need to do to a great extent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for the group?
Yeah.
You have a question?
Yeah, she wrote it down.
So your ask for the moment is that people get in touch with you and give you feedback as to whether or not they want this, what they'd like to see in it, what is your ask right now?
Well, I think, this is not usually the normal procedure. Normally you work on coming up with a code and then you take it to the public, you have public hearings, public votes. And we thought changing a little bit in the sense that we'd like the public to hear from the public in an earlier stage of the process. Because there's sometimes people are feeling they're left out of the process. And so we would like to include them in the process within reason. And so ideally, we would like this to go forward and actually try to create a code that again tries to satisfy property rights and tree protection. But the comments would be helpful to help sort of guide us in some way.
It's a valiant effort. Sometimes people need something solid to comment against. And Stephen Leventhal, are you with us?
Yes.
Thank you. My only question, what has been your experience with tree codes in your practice?
Well, I served for a dozen years as the village attorney for the village of Muttontown, a heavily wooded village in Nassau County. And just like residents, just like in the same way that on the South Shore, the pristine beaches define the character of the community, so too on the North Shore, the canopy and the trees define the character of the community. So it's a very important value in the village. We developed a law that required permitting. There were exceptions for dead and dangerous trees, but it required an inspection by the arborist. We didn't want somebody to take down a tree claiming it was dead when it was not. The fines that were imposed for violations of the law were based upon the caliper inches that were removed in violation of the law, so that there was a higher penalty for taking down a larger tree and a lesser penalty for a smaller tree. One of the exceptions, of course, were saplings. The regulations only kicked in when the tree achieved a certain number of caliper inches, and it was rigorously enforced. Another exception, by the way, was evergreens. They were not regulated. This was a hardwood ordinance, or as somebody said, a hard wood ordinance.
I guess
putting the enforcement question aside, because it sometimes can be a challenge here in Shelter Island, but given Stephen's experience, would you find it helpful for us to give you some time with him?
Well, no, actually, we've actually done a lot of late work here, so we can actually move forward. So in a way, I'm going to compare this to what Robert Harper just did earlier today. And I actually was part of that presentation where we talked about architectural preservation. And so it was sort of saying, this is what we've been working on. This is what we would like to do. They've done the late work, and I was part of that committee. I am part of that committee. So it's really sort of asking, this is what we'd like to do, and we would like the town board to take this. The only reason I ask for comments is just because the cat is out of the bag, and it would just be perhaps helpful to hear what people have to say about this. But the ideal would be that the town board does take this up, and that we try to move this forward in some direction.
Jim, I think it's a great idea. I think it's something that we should take up.
Can I just add one more?
Appreciate you.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add one more thing to what I said. When I mentioned inspections being required, there also was an exception for that. If it's an emergency, the law permitted the owner to take a photograph of the tree before removing it. In other words, if it was really an imminent danger and had to be removed immediately, the resident, the property owner could take a photograph and remove it. So the arborist would then do the inspection post removal by viewing the photograph.
I think it's a great idea. I think it's long overdue. I think this clear cutting that we see, and you know the house that I'm dealing with across the street that was absolutely, and we have lots throughout Hay Beach that have been clear cut. I think it's long overdue. I'm just wondering to myself, are you asking what the town can do to support this? I think everybody's supporting of it. Okay, I think that what is it you would like us to do? I guess that's the question. How do you see us
I would
persisting?
like you just to say, yes, we would like to go forward with this. I know we need to work with a lawyer. And I think you're in the midst of pursuing that right now, so I think we have to wait for that to happen.
I'm not sure we'd have to. I mean, that was my clumsy attempt before, which is we have a lawyer who's our interim town attorney who has a lot of experience in this.
He also has a ton on his plate already. Like, we're already backlogged with things that we need.
Well, let's ask him what his workload looks like rather than decide what it is.
I don't think we do that right now, because
No.
I've got a list.
Yeah, there's a
So I,
lot
like,
outstanding.
Yeah, I've got a list of, like, a lot of internal things. This is important. This did not get on our list of the top 5, 8 things that we wanted to attack first. So if, like, I have no problem putting it on, I just, like, something else is gonna have to give. I'm trying to pick up comp plan again next week. So.
Right, and then we wanted to take on wetlands and site plan, which are
Yeah.
two things that are
Yeah.
problematic.
So, I mean, if
now.
this
Don't
is,
disagree.
if this is a priority, like, I'm fine with it, but it just, we're gonna have to work harder. And, like, there are things that come up on the agenda, such as the revaluation, which is hugely important, and we spend a lot of time on. But it seems as if every week there is also other things. So, not a problem putting it on. So I'm just thinking, in terms of you getting public comment, maybe we give you 2-3 weeks to receive that comment, digest it, and then the town board picks it up. But then we have to commit to following through on it, because yes, time is of the essence if we want to get something done before the season of clear cutting starts.
Tim, you have created a framework of this, what you're thinking?
Well, we have an outline that we.
An outline, okay.
Actually quite a while ago. So it's really not that difficult for us to take that outline and put that in sort of a kind of order that would mimic the language of the code. We can do that.
I would just say, I don't think we're under any illusion that this is gonna get done by the summer, right? I mean, I think what we're hoping is that by putting this now in the public forum, we blunt a little bit of the, where did this come from? It creates some momentum and some discussion, hopefully not just on Facebook, but more, kind of sending stuff to Tim and having conversations. Give that a month or so. If we can kind of come back to you with the type of feedback, if any, we have, and then incrementally we can discuss. The subcommittee is willing to do basically all the heavy lifting. So, we can draft all the criteria for a town code if there's receptiveness by the board. And then, and hand it to a lawyer who can then just turn it into code and put some nuances. We're willing to do a lot of the lifting. We've done it already. And so understand there are other priorities, but you have willing people that can draft very significantly, should be pretty easy, especially for someone who knows, how they've done it before. There's plenty of precedent out there.
Can I ask the two of you then to come up with like a less than 1 pager of talking points? So that we can put that on the town website and say, here are the talking points, what we want feedback on, so that you get targeted feedback, and then you can take that and come back to us in a month, 5 weeks.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that.
And then commitment from the board that we pick this up and actually devote time to it.
I think that has to be a discussion. We already have a lot of significant things on our plate.
We can do whatever, and again, as Sean said, we have been working on this for 1.5 years, so we're quite versed in.
Sean, the town has had different events, just hypothetically, out in the library under the tent. Is that something that's of value to bring people together and have that kind of a discussion?
I think it may be. I think, that some of what, I think we have to see what kind of feedback we get, right? I mean, and how much outreach is going to be needed to pull that feedback forward so that we don't put a code draft out there and then people come, we're trying to kind of have that conversation a little bit ahead of time so that we understand what people's concerns are. So it may very well be that once we get into spring or early summer,
Right.
we've reached a new point, and that makes sense because we're able to kind of, flush people out a little bit and hear their concerns. And so I think it's completely open in that regard. But the last thing I'd say that I didn't say before is a lot of times what people think about is, well, isn't this just about clear cutting, right? And we're just concerned about clear cutting. It's broader than that, really, if you think about the ecology and what you're trying to maintain. But most importantly, if you look at the precedents out there, everybody has tried to find a way to write a code because there's no way to define what clear cutting is, right? You can't write a code that says you can't clear cuts. Everybody will take down all the trees except one. You try it. It's a mind game. You're not going to get there, right? And so you have to come up with something that has a little bit of subjectivity to it, where there's going to be somebody who's able to work with, you, a board, a committee, a building inspector to kind of make a judgment, but there are parameters out there of which there are guidelines of what they're making their judgments based on.
I really like what you're working on, because I think that we look at permits and we look at different site plan reviews, and quite honestly, when people are doing things, okay, we don't necessarily look for what trees are being removed on the property. At least I've never seen it on any of our drawings, okay?
Right.
And I think it has a lot of merit, okay? And, it should be there, okay? That's the bottom line. It should be part of the permitting process, particularly when we're building on, a vacant land. Do we want it all removed, and and you're looking for feedback. You want to make sure that what you're thinking, the public is sort of buying into.
Correct.
Along with the other outside thing of having property rights that don't tell me what the hell to do with my property.
Yep.
Do I got it?
Yep. And it's all about reasonableness. It's about moderate density, balance. It's not, you can never take down a tree. You can't, it's about placing a higher value on the trees so that we can get a decent balance.
Got it.
I think we don't see what trees are gonna get taken down because they've already been cut down by the time we get to the site plan.
On the other issues, a lot of trees are coming down now, this sycamore maples. It was maples that were planted all over the island after the 1938 hurricane. They're all coming down. In the heights, I walk around the heights a lot. And we have trees, they're oak trees that are probably, I grew up next door. I came here in 1948. And the house that we lived in had trees that were already above the house. Those trees are still there. Those trees are probably 150 years old, and we have a lot of trees like that in the heights. And so if you lose those trees, you're losing, it's the same as what Robert Harper was talking about. It's part of the history of these neighborhoods. Eventually the trees do go, that's another story, but we need to regard them carefully.
Can I make another comment, please? The ordinance or the local law can also provide for mitigation so that if tree removal is approved, the appropriate authority can impose a requirement of replanting. And if there's no appropriate place on the subject property to plant a tree, the replanting can be elsewhere in the village at a place designated by the appropriate authority. So if there's village property, for example, if there's a park, the mitigation can take place elsewhere so that there's not a net loss of trees.
Is there anyone in the physical audience who has any questions on this? Anyone on Zoom? Pam?
Yeah, hi. I just want to mention that as a landscape designer, I've had to go to various towns to get permits to remove trees on properties. The town of Huntington is one. The village of Garden City has a very strict tree ordinance on the books. Muttontown is absolutely the same. And as Mr. Leventhal has said, yes, if you can't make the mitigating factors on the property, they do allow you to plant trees elsewhere in these places to accommodate the removal of a tree for certain construction projects that people want to do on private property. So I think it's rather workable and probably not too difficult to put together code that would be satisfactory to everyone on the island. The value of trees is quite important, and there's a lot of studies that have been done, and I think it's worth taking up, and I don't believe it will take up too much of the town board's time. So if Tim would like to get in touch with me, I think you have my email address, Tim. We can talk about that further, but I'd be happy to help you out with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pam. Anyone else? Okay, so you two will work on like the talking points and getting the the public information, because once it comes to the town board with draft legislation, then all public input ceases until we get to a public hearing. And then we will work on how we fit it into our schedule.
Great.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Anyone else need anything? I'll make running to get water.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah. Stand up.
you're not alone. We're just taking a pause for a second.
Water. Right along.
Being facetious. I do that one faster than I anticipated.
That's what it is. Never know.
It's our job.
Spot looks like my desk. Paper.
Go out there and speed them along. Should I go out there and speed them along?
So I can see it looks like he's putting that inside. So he's
Were they talking about that? Yeah. I heard voices.
Somebody left in the audience. It's not here, I mean, that's one.
Yes.
Yeah, I see, I heard this.
Feel better about my desktop now that I looked at.
Okay. It's a hot mess. I know. I've got like 500 different. All right. My desktop is a nightmare. That's, I was laughing at me. Oh, wow. You can't see my back. All right, back to work. Yeah. All right, the next topic on the agenda is the wetlands permit application for Han at 70 Tuttle Drive. And so we had a public hearing on that. We closed it. We had town board discussion, and we have gotten a request in from the attorney from the homeowner, and I want to have Steve address it, because what can we receive in now that the public hearing's closed, and how do we proceed? So Steve, I turn this over to you.
Sure. The proposal is that the applicant would reduce the intensity of the invasion into the wetlands that was the subject of the original request, in that rather than a full 7-foot 6-inch basement, the proposal now is that there be a 5-foot crawl space throughout the building footprint. So this is a reduction in intensity. It's not a change in the nature of the application. It's just a reduction essentially in the height of the below ground portion of the project. So since there was a full public hearing on the original proposal, which included a full 7-foot 6-inch basement, and this is a downward modification, I think the board, if it chose to, could approve this or deny it without reopening the hearing.
And I think that's what the applicant is trying to avoid, is having us reopen the public hearing, which then would push us into April or May. Push out construction even longer. Just looking. So previously, when they had changed the modified things that we had at the prior public hearing, the previously proposed floor finish, I think, went from 3 feet above groundwater, 3 feet 2 inches, to 3 feet 8 inches. So then if we're changing this, we're adding another 2 feet 6 inches. So if I can do math, which I'm not sure if this tenfold I can. Maybe over 5.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we're at like 6 feet 2 inches to groundwater. My one question is, there was like some, I think there were mechanicals down there, but I think there was a washer dryer.
Yeah, there's a laundry room in the basement.
Yeah. Right.
But other than that, it was supposed to be substantially unfinished.
Yeah.
What's being proposed is a crawl space, not for the laundry room, but for a holding tank
Mechanicals.
and mechanicals.
Right, well, you'll have the mechanicals in the basement?
No, the mechanicals on the roof.
I think it's just a holding tank. They readjusted the roof at the zoning board to fit the mechanicals upstairs.
Right. Yeah, I guess, yeah, the holding tank for the low flow pump.
So what happens with the side stairwell?
Good question. It must go away, no?
I would think so.
I mean, I think they'd still want access to the space.
Oh, and take out the
Well,
internal access?
We really, it would be nice to have another set of plans to review.
They're just changing the height of the basement, that's what it looks like. It doesn't look like they're changing any other aspects of the plan, just. Can't accept it. Just changing it.
Well, you wouldn't have a stairwell going down interior to the basement, would you?
I mean, they're not proposing to change that, maybe they still want to have a washer and dryer down there, and you just have to
Moving forward.
duct to do it.
We need to build plans.
So, Stephen, what can we, since the hearing is closed, what can we accept as far as changed plans? Like if we say, yeah, we're considering this, but now we want to know what's happening with the side door access, what's happening with the washer dryer, can we request that information?
Well, I think you've got enough information now to impose whatever conditions and restrictions the board wants. If the board chooses to grant this request, it can just determine for itself what happens with those elements. And then if they want further relief, then it may be necessary to open up the hearing.
All right, so looking at this, she wanted to limit the foundation to a crawl space, allow a 5-foot clearance to accommodate mechanical equipment in the water storage tank.
I
reduce.
brought up the issue of, the stair you had brought up. Is that still there? We don't know. I mean, they talked about the basement,
I'm presuming it's still there because it's not being addressed in the request.
and I had brought up my concern about the first floor deck. That deck and the steps extends into the vegetative buffer. It's not part of the original footprint. The
But this
deck that exists on the house is currently an indent into the house.
Right.
So the deck and all the steps are added on into the wetland, into the vegetative buffer. If they indented the deck like it was, they could have a staircase that would be there, a wide staircase that could be the 100 square foot exemption in the wetlands vegetative area.
So you're asking for a redesign.
But I'm just, bringing it up.
I mean, that is essentially a wide staircase because the slider doors open all the way for that wall. So it's not really a deck. You have to have a certain platform at the top of stairs for
But it's
safety.
indented.
It's indented, yeah.
The existing house, that deck area, that porch area is indented into the footprint of the house.
Yes.
It doesn't show it.
Doesn't have a foundation
Draw it.
underneath it.
Oh, I see.
So if the steps comes
Yeah, so
down,
they're
then
not-
there's a 100 square foot exemption for the steps. And moving forward, don't we need a set of plans, a finalized set of plans to approve in the wetlands application?
That's where Stephen needs to weigh in.
Yes, you need a set of plans to approve. But if it's consistent with the hearing that was previously conducted, with the exception of this downward modification of the proposed below-ground portion, then you've got what you need to approve or disapprove.
Well, what Albert's proposing is the deck gets incorporated into the footprint of the building instead of being attached to the building. So does that fit? No, it doesn't. It's a change in the plans, I think.
Well, you can approve with conditions, set forth what those conditions are, and the final condition to be submit plans consistent with the decision for approval by the building department.
Sounds almost acceptable.
Or the town board if you want to retain that authority yourself.
Is to approve it with the conditions, your question about the deck, your question about the stairs, the crawl space, shortening the basement, and then
The height.
the fourth condition is give us new plans.
Well, they'd have
Well,
to give new
that's-
plans to the building department in order to get a permit.
Yeah,
And the building department just has to make sure that the plans meet the conditions that we
Yes.
put on the resolution.
Right, and you can also grant preliminary approval subject to the submission of plans or final
Okay.
approval.
Yeah, I'd like to see that the height of the house remains at its lowest point as possible as it was presented, that that's not adjusted.
Right, the attorney who made this proposal himself suggested that the board grant a conditional approval.
Okay, all right.
That's just addressing the basement, not.
Yeah, it's not raising the height of the building at all, it's just raising the basement floor up 2 feet, so the basement height is.
That's all, I just
Yeah.
would want that, the height consistent, that's all,
Right.
because it's gonna be kind of a wall across.
so we put that in as a condition for the conditional approval then.
Yeah,
That the height
So-
remain at the height that they proposed.
Basement goes to crawl space, height remains the same.
Mhm.
And actually, the staircase then goes in the alcove. The plat is, right now,
I mean, if they indent the front of the house, the water side of the house, like it is now, that serves as the porch or deck area. And then they can have stairs going down 100 square feet of space, and that's just their 100 square foot exception.
Because what you're doing is you're dealing with the existing foundation. That's the existing foundation with the indent. There's no expansion. That's really what you're saying.
Now, the basement stairs, we don't know, or we don't know about.
Assuming it's not coming off because it wasn't mentioned.
Right.
Okay.
Assuming they stay.
Because with the crawl space, you could still put kayak down there. Hard angle to get in there, but
Good to have more than one way to access a space.
so the existing deck patio was 191 square feet. And the proposed was 291 square feet. Okay, I see it here. So it was the covered porch and rear stair was 110 square feet, just that piece. And it was 208 square feet for the rear stairs. So rather than telling them that they have to indent it and put it inside, how about we just ask that they keep the rear stairs to the 110 square feet from 208? So then it's
I mean,
still no
the whole
expansion.
premise of their design was to keep it within the existing footprint, and it's not.
Well, they're keeping the main structure within the,
Reduce the deck to 100 square feet. I mean, it doesn't go down. It's not
right.
in the ground. If you reduce it to 100 square feet, is it really expansion in the wetlands?
Because you got living space, you've created living space and.
The outside deck?
No,
But it's not
no,
really.
the way it is right now, the way he drew it,
Down.
you've expanded the structure inside, you've expanded the foundation. Because the indent is now not an indent, the foundation is going all the way out to the exterior wall where the sliding doors are.
Jinxie on your beer.
We don't have a foundation plan of the existing, do we? Of like, we just have the survey,
Right.
so we don't know if the foundation squares off there. If that's it. You know, it may just be that
Oh.
they just did a basic rectangular foundation and then just put a deck using that foundation wall.
Well, that means that if you got that first floor, that A101, if you look at that particular drawing, okay? Sorry, I'm looking at,
No, you want A100.
100?
your A100, okay, you're basically, you're eliminating the, you would be set back. I don't think that living floor is gonna be on a crawl space. Where the dining room table is a problem.
Talking about.
The indent, okay, is, I don't know how to show this, okay.
Yeah, the indent, what I'm saying is we don't know for sure that the foundation actually indents there. It could just be a rectangular foundation and they just put a deck in that area with, I mean, because they had to support it somehow. I'm saying the original, we don't have a foundation plan for the original structure. The question is, I don't think we need one. It's just,
The foundation as it currently exists goes right across where it's denoted on the plan sheet. That's the foundation.
What
And
are you
the
looking at?
the deck is indented into the house.
Which plan are you looking at? Which page?
1730,
right, so that foundation's not changing at all.
Right.
Right. So I'm confused, obviously.
So the deck is being added on
Yes.
outside of the foundation. It's not within the footprint.
Correct.
The current house is indented. The deck is indented house.
Right.
And then
17-134. That's the original house.
Yeah.
Where the X is,
Right. And then they just have the staircase coming off of it.
Yeah.
Right. No, I understand that.
The suggestion is to shrink the deck. Since it's,
put it in the house as it currently exists.
or shrink it to 100 square feet outside of the foundation. Is,
But that's what I was suggesting.
yeah, is that
I
acceptable?
mean, that makes more sense, I think. It's.
I want to see if that.
Because if
is
it's-
that
it's-
acceptable.
You know, but a deck in the stairs, 100 square feet.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so let's see, if it's,
Just trying to find a path to,
Yeah, no, I
some
understand.
conditions today to, so we can let these people go on with their lives.
right, totally.
But still maintain environmental integrity.
291 square feet, it's,
What are you looking at?
that,
The existing,
dimensions of the deck in the back, we cut it down to 100 square feet. How much of the open door space does it cover? So you don't want people walking out of an open door and falling because the deck doesn't cover the expanse of the opening.
We'll have to change the doors.
Right.
Let's
But I just want to
Make them
see
plate glass windows.
what kind of impact. And it's about half.
I mean, they get the same effect of light and air. I mean, it's an architect's problem, but you know, they can put a knee wall in and a nano window that opens all the way up.
If you look at the survey of the property, you'll see the indent of the current, you can, oh, okay, you are looking
yeah,
at
it's
it, okay.
95 square feet. I just did the math.
The rear stair is 208 square feet. You can reduce it down to 100 square feet. I mean, half the size of this should essentially fit within the openings area.
Yeah, well,
Door, so-
yeah, by allowing them to move the deck on the outside of that line there, we're giving them 95 square feet more of interior living space.
correct.
And that's, I guess that's the objection. Because we're objecting to giving them that.
No, just reducing it to 100 square feet. The
Yeah, I was
deck-
saying-
The deck and stair.
Yeah, the outside piece, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so not
Fine.
making them force.
And that's
them-
their 100 square foot exemption.
Yeah, so not forcing them to put it back inside.
I think so.
I'm just trying to understand what.
Yeah, I mean, I would say reduce it to 100 square feet. Put it in the house.
Seems to make sense to me. But
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say the existing porch plus the stair is 110 square feet, so. 96 was interior and 14 feet were exterior. So I was gonna say keep it at 110 square feet. Just,
That's fine.
they get to keep the existing 14 feet and 96 of,
Essentially, you're cutting what's there by 100 square feet.
yeah.
So it's a 50% reduction
Yeah.
in what they're asking for.
Yeah.
What's the total square footage you're coming up with?
outside of the foundation, sounds like 100,
Yeah,
So 10 feet more, 10 square feet more than, you know what?
Yeah, but they already have 14 feet existing built there. That's already outside.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. Because you're also getting the 5-foot basement instead of the 7.5-foot basement.
Yeah.
Basement was less than 5, but it was like 4.5. Right, had that up, bro?
The height of the basement?
Yeah.
What they're asking
They're
for is 5 foot.
5 foot.
Yeah. Yeah, because the existing basement is, that page opened before,
7.5.
was, yeah.
Yeah, they wanted it to go from,
Where are you?
Mechanicals go in there like a pressure tank.
yeah, the water storage tank, because if we're gonna require low flow pump, they need a water storage tank, so
Give us the map. And it was, yeah.
What was interesting on the project is the new power, the new electric line going in. I looked at it recently, okay, I don't remember, it looks like they put new service line in, okay?
Underground?
No, it's outside, I didn't understand that, but that's my eyes, okay? The service panel is on the outside.
of the house.
Yeah, and if somebody just recently did it, over the weekend, I just saw it,
They
okay?
might have done that because they know they're gonna demo it, and then they can just move the service to the side and
Yeah,
have power
that.
while they're working without it being attached to the house.
Okay,
So,
Yeah,
Are we
so-
there?
what are we doing?
are we there?
So
Are
the
you
notes,
okay?
The only other thing I'd request is a vegetative plan showing 20 feet.
right.
You know, just so we have an
Yeah, we
updated
had that,
plan
yeah.
for everything.
Yeah, the
Yes.
conditions I had listed were the 5-foot basement crawl space instead of the full basement. The low flow pump for the well, 20-foot vegetative buffer, and 110 square foot back deck instead of the 200 square foot back deck
What about the staircase?
on the side.
On the side.
I don't have any comments on that. Do we want to make a comment on that? I mean, I think if
Good point.
you want access,
The side setbacks are ridiculous, I mean, but I know it doesn't seem to impact anybody. Huh? There are no setbacks.
well, yeah.
I mean, it's,
I was gonna say, there's,
I would have thought that, you know, just from an individual, you would want to have the ability of being able to get to your front yard. I
Well,
mean,
they're the ones that gotta live
this-
there.
right.
so.
the ZBA already gave them the setback, the side yard setback. I also had no dewatering during construction.
Yeah. Pretty low possibility there now.
We've just lowered that. Yeah, let me just make sure
You
that,
got dry wells are all through, we're calling for rain collection off the roof.
that was already on.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah, it's already-
Yeah.
The height reduction that was presented to be maintained.
Yes, oh yeah, so put that down, that with the
The height
crawl,
as
yeah, the crawl space, change does not impact
right.
building height. What did we say the budget, oh yeah, 20-foot buffer,
Mhm.
vegetative buffer,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Silt fence, like all the basics.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the usuals.
Yeah. Silt fence, no storage of materials in the home.
Yeah.
I think some of these things we just need to incorporate into the wetlands code as requirements, like you're
Yeah.
required to have silt fencing, we should put that in the resolution.
Exactly, yeah.
There's a lot of good stuff there.
I think that's everything that I had. We,
Revised drawings will go to the building department, and they'll
they will double check and make
check
sure.
to make sure it's correct.
Yes, which is what they do anyways.
That's what they do, yeah, they issue the permit.
Yeah, yeah, they won't issue the permit unless everything is.
You get a copy of the resolution.
We also get a copy of the final plan that's stamped with the date and the resolution.
Final.
Yes.
All right, so Steve will get that list to you.
Right.
I'll email in my notes.
Okay. And then Meg, Marks, you sent over.
I did.
Yeah, yeah, apologies on that last week being away. Yeah,
Feels like it.
yeah, exactly, being away. I had left my notes behind, so I couldn't get you the Marks, stuff. Meg was away too, so,
Yeah, so sorry, I sent it when I got back.
yeah.
You are away for a year, that means I'm supervisor.
All right, so that is on. Moving on to Liberty Lawn Care. No, we have.
Oh, we're gonna do a
just vote on the
resolution.
Yes, Peter will do the, draft the resolution, circulate it for us to look at, and then on March 17th, or if we have a special before then.
Okay.
Okay. Site plan review, and I see Caitlin's joined us too. I'm like drawing a blank because my brain is starting to get foggy.
I think
What,
we have
is this
everything.
yeah, we closed this, we were waiting for
Yeah, we have the planning board.
planning board, okay, I was
We
gonna
have
say
that.
planning board, I thought, yeah.
Yeah. So their report says that, essentially this is the second time they've looked at this. They've already gone through it and approved it once.
Right.
They said the choice to house mechanical and maintenance equipment within a basement rather than outside, which could contribute to further need to screen and abate noise disturbances, is a step further in compliance with the greater good of the community. There's no additional water demands or hazards to human life in simply relocating said bathroom to a different floor. Though these changes were modest in comparison to the original approved permit, we agree with and respect the building department's decision to ask for a new site plan review. We hope that our comments are of assistance to the town board in guiding this project through its fruition. The planning board recommends moving forward with their site plan review. And then they did weigh in on interior circulation and parking, on all their different things, but this is essentially the same, all the outside aspects are the same as they were the first time they reviewed it. So there was no real change.
Where did I see? Did I see the planning board or sometime I saw it somewhere that put a stipulation that if there's ever any change in use,
Well,
that would have to be.
Well, if there's any change of use, they have to come back for a whole other site plan
Okay.
review
Do we need
because
to put that in?
it's in code already.
Yeah,
It's already,
it's part of our town code. Yeah,
Okay, all right.
yeah, they put, if they put a building permit in and there's a change in use, yeah. They get a denial letter and they have to come back. So on this, we'd be requesting the parking waiver, I mean, granting the parking waiver, they requested that. I think moving the site plan, I think. Yeah. There's really no other changes.
PW's asking to comment on secret.
Yes, Caitlin?
Hi, yes, good afternoon. So as far as the seeker is concerned, now that we have the planning board's letter, we're continuing to advance the parts 2 and 3 environmental assessment form to make that determination of significance, which will be, done shortly. We have everything that we need. And we will then transmit for the board to take action. It's an unlisted preliminary, classified as unlisted action. And with the parts 2 and 3 and the determination of significance, the board will then be able to assume lead agency and determine the significance of the action before granting site plan approval. So we're working on that.
Thank you.
Are there any comments or conditions for this application?
I don't have anything in my notes.
Neither do I.
So we don't have to put in retail only because of the code. If they do something different, they have to reapply.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
And it's not retail.
Right.
If they switch to retail, then
If they
have
switch to
come
retail,
back.
they have to come back.
Right, okay.
Okay. That's,
I think
I mean, it should be an easy one because they
Right.
already have,
it's just waiting on Basers.
yeah, they've already done everything from the first site plan review that they were for the work.
As long as nobody does anything.
Yeah, all right, done on that one. On to board member reports.
We won't wait, let's see.
Right, so it would have been the week before, and I know I have something, but I didn't bring it in, so, next week. On the town website, we are looking for a community housing board member. It's listed on the town website. We are hoping that you'll give preference to somebody who has built current or prior building experience and credentials. We are also looking for licensing review board member wanted. Previously, we had been looking for someone who had either a current or retired contractor. Since we have 2 of those now on the board appointed last night, we can now open it up to community members. We are looking for a town attorney, so if you know of anybody out there, send them our way. That too is on the town website.
Where else can we advertise, or where else, is there any more additional advertising or outreach that can be done?
Coco was today going to post it on the Association of Towns website, and actually, she had like 50 copies, and when I went into one of the classes, it was like, oh, what's this piece of paper? Oh, look, Shelter Island Town Attorney position. And it was the room that all of the legal classes were held in, so it was.
She saturated the place.
She did, yeah, well done, Coco.
Yeah.
And she does have a list, she's put it on LinkedIn, Indeed,
I put it on
website, yeah.
27 East Suffolk County Time and Shelter Island Reporter.
So we probably should maybe put it into Newsday one day. It's much more
I
expensive.
was trying to think of some papers or entity a little more west.
Did we
That's what I'm
send it?
thinking Newsday.
About 27 East.
It's there.
It's in there.
I put it in, yeah.
Yeah.
Did we send it to the Suffolk County board,
Bar Association.
Thank you.
Yes.
Suffolk County Bar Association.
Yes, I think Steve took care of that
Steve
for
did
us.
that for us?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I took care of the State Bar Association, local and state government law section. I did not contact the Suffolk County
think
Bar.
Coco
I
did
will
that.
do that if you want me to, but I have
No,
not
I-
done that.
We'll check with Coco. She may
I
have
think
done
I think we
that.
might have done it.
Yeah, she gave me a list at one point, but it was before going off to Association of Towns, so.
Okay.
We'll just send her an email asking. Yeah, I don't know if she's still here. Christina's just gonna check to see if Coco's still here. But while she's doing that, anybody else have any board member reports?
I could talk a little bit about a couple of items, okay? I thought the,
She did. Coco did submit it to Suffolk County Bar.
I thought that the Association of Towns was a good meeting for me, okay? And I thought that some of the things that were a little on the lean side, I was really more concerned. I attended some of the classes on the environment in terms of PFAS and PFOS, okay? And it was interesting because I thought I was in the wrong class because one of them was an attorney who was working with large municipalities, okay? And they basically were looking to have sign up the towns to enter into a lawsuit against 3M and DuPont, which really didn't have any application for us because we don't have, what happened with the PFAS is that it's really seems to be somewhat not limited, it's all over the place, but it's more critical in landfills, it's more critical in airports, it's real fire departments and so forth. But it was really, I got the feeling it was really more for an attorney trying to sell their services to the municipality to get into a lawsuit. The other one I attended was interesting because they went through everything and then it became someone who was really trying to sell equipment. Okay, so I didn't find it really, I mean, it was informational and a lot of the towns that are small like our size, okay, did have municipal wastewater treatments combined with individual wells, okay, so they were dealing with the same thing. The other thing that was sort of surprising is that they are mandating IAs, but they didn't have any grant programs. So we're kind of surprised that we had on the East End a grant program, okay? And the only other thing that I would like to just talk about, okay, I've been chatting with Joe Fenora for a couple of weeks now, like 3 weeks. And I asked him to put together put the complex in the center together so we know where all the municipal buildings are. I know that he's been asked to put a presentation together for the board for next week, okay? And the town has not ever applied for a variance on anything. Okay, so he said,
We did for the Legion, and we were denied.
well, maybe I stand to be corrected. We're talking about this, but he had said that he had not, where the buildings were overlapping and he had all those circles, he said we had never done that, okay? So I'm hoping that once we have that, I think it's, if we put it together and we have a drawing, a conceptual understanding, there's no reason why we can't bounce the conceptual part of IAs off of Suffolk County, whether it be the planning board or Suffolk County Health Department, just to get their input as to what they think, okay? The test results here in the center with the water results are really not, it's not, there's other issues there, but I think the IAs are really the direction that we should go. I think we owe it to the communities to move forward with this. And it's really all part of water, maintaining or improving our aquifer. I think we have that grant, even though we have some things going on down at Washington. I think that money should be readily available, okay? or as a grant program. I'm hoping that after next week's meeting, we can talk about that and maybe we can take the next step and move forward with it. Okay?
Did your conversation with Joe also include under sink applications for things that could be lost?
Well, we're gonna need some of that stuff here in the municipal buildings that have a different higher standard with, as far as their water quality. I didn't get into that. My feeling was, I think that like the police station, that could be done, according to him, almost immediately. And it would be nothing holding that back because they have enough separation. But I think if we get a drawing here and we look at it, and then we can go to these departments and let's bring it to a conclusion. I think enough time has gone by. I think that we should be able to move the thing forward and do our part.
Just to speak to your comment though, about the under sink things and stuff like that, in order to bring us up to Suffolk County health standards on the community wells that we have, because that's how we're classified, I think the total project was between 70 and 100,000. So at budget time, we had discussed that and we pulled it. But we do have to address it. And the possibility, we pulled it because we were going to discuss the possibility of maybe doing something, bringing in water, and then that would change how we could place things. So it's part of the whole discussion that he's going to bring in next week. But so, I mean, he has done somewhat of a cost estimate of what it would like for us to treat the water here.
And that will fall under the $1.2 million grant?
It would have to
No.
be used for one or the other, water or wastewater.
Yeah.
So we have to pick one.
And I'm not sure if we could use it for the fix. Like if we're dropping a well, I think we could probably do that. If we're just putting in maintenance, operational things, I don't think it covers that.
Does that mean IA system?
IA systems, yes, because it's treating municipal wastewater. IA systems does fall under it.
Because that's expensive. The under sink solutions are not expensive.
But that's not an option for us.
It's part of the $70,000 to $100,000.
Yeah.
Like, so you say they're not expensive, but we're talking 70 to 100.
But we don't have any hard estimates. I mean, there are no estimates floating around. I think there was a verb. I mean, I didn't see any documentation on that. Okay, just saying it. I was really more focused in on getting the waste taken care of.
But
Which is gonna be hand in hand with.
Yes, exactly. We have to look at the whole picture.
Yeah, I think we should.
Yes, no, we need to start moving forward. And originally that 1.25 million was part of the slash, and then it got reinstated. So right now.
Let's just spend it for get slashed again.
Yeah, well, first we have to get contracts.
There's a certain, even a chainsaw.
There are, like, it's not like, here you go, give us the money. There's like a contract that has to be developed. And so we need to talk to Jen Mezziano because she was trying to set up the meeting with the people from the EPA so that we could start to work on that contracting. There's been no outreach from them again. So there is chaos down in Washington. So while the money's back on the table per news outlets and what's happened with pauses,
There's no guarantee.
yeah, we don't know who's going to have a job next week.
So the grant is for how much money?
1.25 million.
1.25, and that's from the county.
No, it's from the feds.
From the
Lamona,
feds.
Schumer,
Okay.
Bill.
And that's was initially earmarked for wastewater.
Yeah.
So it can only apply to wastewater or water, we don't know.
It can go to either. I read through the documents that they sent us, and it was initially wastewater, but because it's the EPA, it could be used for drinking water.
But it has to be
But we have
municipal
It has to be
drinking water.
municipal.
Only
drinking
municipal.
water.
So-
Municipal wastewater.
So it could be here, the library, school, fire district, but not
It can't be
not
individual
residential.
homes.
not residential.
All right,
But we have to put
we
in-
could take care of the wastewater.
Yeah. We could deal with all the buildings in the
Yeah.
city, the public buildings.
Yes.
I mean, but we have to decide which way to go, because it's a one-time ask, like we want to flip it from wastewater to water, or we just keep it at wastewater, but we can't divvy it up and do a little of both. It has to be one or the other.
In order to address one, you're gonna have to address the other. It's really the only way to do it.
Use the grant to address the more expensive.
Exactly.
And the other we pay for.
Yeah. yeah, I mean, and we also want to look at, are there other funding sources for whichever one we don't use this money for?
Right.
Right now, the new tax gives us a money for waste,
You know, the only other thing, just with the Association of Towns, I found really kind of interesting, attending a financial meeting, okay, at least the report that I was in, a woman asked the question, okay, from New York State, you know, how many people here are board members, okay? And she proceeded to say, kind of make fun of board members because she made the statement, you know, you should pay attention here because you were really hired on the basis of popularity. Okay, you should really know your fiduciary responsibilities. And I thought that was a very interesting statement. She said, normally, a lot of the board members don't pay attention to budgets, okay? And if anything I can leave with any new board members here, you should be responsible because ultimately, as board members, you know, you have the fiduciary responsibility. So when things go wrong, it's you, not the other department head, but it's you, okay? Anyhow, that was just, it was.
we actually, when we go to those things, there are a lot of things that we do right.
Yes.
Yeah. So
We do.
like we're small, but maybe. Yeah.
That's all I have, okay?
Anybody else?
No, I don't have any.
No.
Right, we need to go into executive session to talk about employment matters. So if we could have a motion to go in executive
Make a
session.
motion.
Second?
All in favor?
All right.